Hello and welcome back to the Scarfe Spurs Talk podcast. I'm afraid that today could be another therapy session because, simply unacceptable, isn't it? Spurs suffer yet another defeat, 15th for the Premier League season, 19th in all competitions. We've lost 50% of our Premier League games this year. It's not acceptable for a club like Spurs. We will get into it. There's a lot to discuss, but we'll hopefully as well try and pick out a few positives, if there are any. So a lot to discuss, so make sure you are staying tuned. Let's introduce the panel to get me through this because they're going to need their help tonight as we discuss another Spurs disaster show. Joe, thank you very much for coming on once again. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Been quite a while since I've been on, but no, really looking forward to kind of getting into it. I was just like, look at when the intro was going through, I saw the when Maddison celebrated his was it his first goal or second goal against City, and then I'm thinking, oh my god, that feels so long ago now. That feels so long ago. But yeah, no, really happy to be back on and looking forward to talking to some like-minded Spurs fans about the poor result on the weekend and maybe looking forward.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for joining us. Harry, your debut on the podcast. Always wanted to collaborate with you, for a little while now. So thanks so much for coming on. How you doing?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me on. But it's been long overdue, hasn't it? This collaboration. So yeah, looking forward to getting underway.
No, should be a good one. Thank you. Sorry about the circumstances, but still, let's hope we can make it a good one. Justin, thanks so much for coming on this evening. I mean, always seem to bring you on, don't I? As you say yourself, when the result isn't good.
I was going to say, when you book me in, I might as well just turn around to you and say, right, put a bet or something on Spurs losing, because generally that's when I get invited onto these things to perhaps wear my t-shirt that I've still got, and rant about the wonders that is Spurs. So I'm looking forward to it. But thanks for having us on.
No, you're absolutely fine. You can blame me for that, all this scheduling.
No.
And last but not least, Simon, thank you very much for coming on. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
No, good, thanks.
See some new faces. Hi, I'm Simon.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Justin. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming on. Let's get into it. Make sure to check out our sponsor in the Kitman. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please do drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Before we get into all the negative stuff or the Fulham stuff, let's focus on the positive. I'm really clutching at straws here, and let's review Alkmaar quickly, that second leg, because last time I spoke to you guys, it would have been before that game. So Joesph, I'll kick it off with you. Looking back, it feels really distant now, doesn't it? I mean, it was a good win, wasn't it? And probably a good performance to go with it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think we're all kind of going into the game with little expectation. I mean, I think we were hoping that Tottenham would be able to come through a result. And I'm sure some people were, expected us still, even with that 1-0 deficit, to come in and get the result. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those games, really. I think we deserved the win from the start of the game. I think we really controlled the game. We played well. Some really nice goals in there, especially that third one. I think that was when, as soon as that third goal went in, I feel like a lot of people were clinging on to that, going, there's the Ange ball that we were promised, and there's a bit of, that's the kind of football we want to see. But it was a performance that I feel like I've expected under Ange, where the teams that we should be beating, we do usually show a lot of promise and a lot of attacking style of play. It was nice in points, but obviously there also is the moment where Odebear kind of loses the ball, or was it Bergvall kind of passing the ball, and it slips under Odebear's foot, and then it goes to 2-1. You're thinking, okay, what's going to happen now? We never keep a clean sheet, do we? So yeah, it was one of those games where I was content with the performance, but I think over such a long period of time now, I've kind of fallen out of love a little bit with Spurs over the last couple of months. So even after winning that game, I wasn't sitting there, clapping my hands, really happy and jolly about it. I think I was just a bit like, yeah, we finally won a game that we should have already been, in a better position in from the first leg, because, that was absolutely atrocious. So a good result, and on to the next one, but it's only going to get tougher from here. AZ are not the best team, 6th in the Eredivisie, and we made a really tough go of it. And, we're now moving forward against Frankfurt. I'm sure we'll get onto that, but that's going to be a much tougher test.
Yeah, totally. Thank you very much. Justin, is it just a case of getting through? Not perfect, not pretty, but we've got the result.
I think, to be fair, to some aspects it is, but I think what was really important from that game was there was some bits in there that we didn't expect that worked really well. And when I saw Odebear on the right, I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. And he offered there were some real sort of benefits with regards to that. We saw in the middle, obviously Lucas Bergvall, who I think is now becoming a late contender for player of the season, because I just think his performances are consistent, regardless of the result. He just be becoming almost like a future captain. Okay, it's at such a young age, but he's giving a real sort of positivity within that. We saw Jed on the left. We saw Romero and Van der Ven, things like that. There was lots of positives, and and the sort of the team goal that was scored by Odegaard was just sensational. It was absolutely brilliant, and it obviously, I know we'll get into it, but you just felt that should have been the catalyst. But as I said, we'll just have to take that result in context of its own. And yep, we got through, played some good football, good positives. We'll obviously we'll dissect Fulham shortly.
We will, don't worry. There's a lot to talk and rant about, I'm sure, to come with that. We're starting off on a positive note. Simon, that third goal, I mean, it's already been mentioned a couple of times already. I mean, but that is classic Ange Ball, isn't it? The way that he wants goals to be scored his way. What are your thoughts on that? You're on mute, Simon.
My God, I'm coming off as a real old head over here. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's it's one of the ways he wants us to score. It's a lovely goal. I think, as you say, it had everything you want and wants in terms of it started with a winger, tracking back, winning the ball back, and then what I liked and what stood out to me with that whole sequence is something that I've been missing a lot of the times when watching us play, which is that every pass was perfect. The angle, weight of the pass, the accuracy, everything was there, and the movement of ball was there. And so I think we've seen us attempt similar types of passages and patterns of play, but not been able to kind of fulfill, get it all the way, because it's so important that everyone does their part and execute it in the perfect way. And I think that's kind of been the issue this whole season, the difference between intent and execution. And that's the confusing part, right, guys? It's okay, is the intent good enough? Is the plan? Is his philosophy? Is his system good enough? What kind of structural problems does it have? And is that the main issue? Or is it the main issue is the players, the execution isn't there? And so I thought that goal perfectly example when the intent and the execution perfectly aligns. So yeah, it was a lovely goal for sure.
It's a shame, isn't it? Sorry, one thing. It's a shame, isn't it, Simon? Because you think about those 3 goals that we scored, they all kind of typified what you would say is the Ange Ball kind of way in terms of, high press for the first goal, winning the ball back in a good position and taking the chance. The second goal was some really nice footwork from Son and from Maddison and some good play, again, winning the ball quite high up. And then that third goal, like you said, is just, exactly that. Every single thing was done expertly, executed exactly the right way. But then we see it one game, and the next game we lack any kind of cohesion, any kind of quality, any kind of execution. So this is where it's so tough to know what you're getting with Tottenham.
And I think that's the cultural war within the fan base, right? I think some of the fan base think the intent is there. They believe in the philosophy, they believe in the system, they believe in the coach, but they see the execution not being good enough. And some might argue we need more time to get there. Some would argue we don't have the players yet. We need the perfect players, the perfect depth, and whatever. And I think another part of the fan base will say the intent isn't good enough. The plan isn't good enough. Sure, the players might not be good enough. The execution might not be good enough. But I also don't believe in the intent, because they would say, Joe, to what you and me are saying here, they would say, yeah, but the execution needs to be so high, or else everything falls through. Like if we lose the ball in that passage of play, we've seen it so many times, and we've seen other teams score against us. And
Yeah,
so they
we're
will
so
say,
prone to that counter attack, aren't we?
yeah,
Anytime
and
we
so they
kind
will
of lose
say,
our rhythm,
yeah,
it
that's
sort of
not
all
just that.
breaks down.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you, guys. Harry, what did you make of Alkmaar looking back?
Well, it was a great night for me personally, because obviously I was there in the South Stand, so it was a brilliant atmosphere, and I think the whole thing going into this tie was, from minute one we needed to be behind the boys, because there was a lot of it was quite a toxic atmosphere against Bournemouth on Sunday, especially in the first half, and it was a pretty diabolical first half, to be honest. So I think the key was to back the boys from minute one, but also I just think it was a prime definition of when Angela works, it works at such a high level. Like the other guys I mentioned, the Odebear goal, it was brilliant build up. It was, Gray to Maddison, a bit of skill, one ball out wide, then to Spence, then a first time ball in. So it was a quick fire football that we haven't seen for so long. Obviously, yes, Coop Miners had scored, pulled one back and actually levelled the tie, but that was just one lapse in concentration. Apart from that, Alkmaar didn't really offer much going forward at all. So I think we were pretty solid defensively as well. Towards the game, we did, slip up a bit, but that's understood with obviously Van der Ven or Romero going off. We didn't finish a game with both of them on the pitch. Obviously, Gray came on. So I think it was more of a case of sort of managing minutes for Romero and Van der Ven after such long-term injuries. But yeah, it was definitely a great night and much needed for Ange. Definitely, that's something that will keep him in his job, I think, a bit longer.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. I'll stick with you though, Harry, because I'll move on to Jed Spence next. He was left out of the England squad.
Yeah.
Thomas Tuchel's first to be announced. Do you think that he's been robbed here?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think when you look at the players who have been picked ahead of him, it's a total robbery. Like, I think for me, Lewis Skelly he's had a breakthrough season for Arsenal, but there's no way on this planet he deserves to be ahead of Spence. He's shown that he's too rash in some circumstances. He's had 2 red cards already this season. I think he was hooked after half an hour at PSV because he was losing his head. He could have been sent off then as well. And then obviously Kyle Walker, it's baffling because he's moved abroad to Italy because he couldn't keep up with the pace of the Premier League. But yet someone who's playing in the Premier League, who's had an unbelievable season, has been left out. Same with Reece James. He's not the same player as he was anymore. And I did think Dan Burn at the beginning, but Dan Burn showed yesterday that he's got the quality. But again, in an England team, which is an attacking style to play with Tuchel, we have pacey wing backs. Jed Spence is perfect for either side. He can play left or right. So I think it's a massive robbery, and I think it will. And I think if Spence does get called up, in time to come, then it will show. It will definitely show that Spence should have been called up now. It's definitely a robbery to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned Lewis Skelly there. For me, I think that he probably himself has a really good case to be called up, and I'm not going to sit here and go, okay, he shouldn't be here or should be here. I haven't watched as Arsenal that much this season. They're hard enough to watch, especially with Arteta in charge. But Spence, for me, I think that other football fans will recognise how good he's been for Spurs. You didn't have to watch Spurs that much to know he's been one of the better defenders in the league. But as you say, Harry, Kyle Walker being in there, I mean, it has to be Spence over him. So I'm totally with you on
100%.
that. It's a bit baffling.
Yeah.
But Justin, do you agree that Spence has probably been hard done by here?
I think what we're seeing, particularly with the squad that Tuchel has picked, is there is no interest in building anything. This reminds me of when Mourinho walked through the door at Spurs, or when Conte walked through the door at Spurs. This isn't about laying foundations. This isn't about bringing players through from the under 21s, whatever it may be. This is, I need to win. And he believes that by having the likes of Jordan Henderson, Kyle Walker, Reece James, things like that are going to help him do that, because you could make, I think there's arguments for others as well as Jed. I think obviously wasn't helped is the fact that we can all see he's a better left back than he is a right back. So I think, that might help once he actually does get played in that position. But sadly, I think he just joins a queue of people like, Morgan Gibbs-White, although he got called up today, Elliot Anderson, people like that who have been so good for their clubs, but he isn't going to pick because of the nature of the fact that, are they going to win him the World Cup? That's what he's here for. So, you know, that's why we're seeing the likes of Marcus Rashford, because we've seen they've been able to do it on the big stage. So he's thinking, I need them in because I don't trust younger, inexperienced players to make a collective squad out of, which I can kind of understand because he's got such a short contract.
I was just going to say to you, is it to do with the fact he's only got an 18-month
Yeah.
contract? He's going to, he hasn't got the time to embed younger players to give them those chances.
Yeah, I think it is, because the fact of it being is that if he doesn't win the World Cup, he's out the door. You know, he's there for one reason and one reason alone. So I do believe that from his perspective, he will think, well, if that's all you've got me here, why am I going to sit there? Because, you know, younger players, especially the ones in the under-21s, will be, you know, he's not got any interest in them unless they are absolutely firing. He's not going to be looking at any of them because, you know, he's going to be sitting there thinking, am I going to have, what's the point? I could do all that work for you and then give you to another manager. I'm not interested in that. I want people who can win now. And I think it's kind of sad and summarised by the fact that Jamie Donnelly has been called up by the Northern Ireland squad, you know, because he's clearly looked at it and thought, well, I'm going to get a game for next sort of couple of years. So what's the point? I might as well get some decent experience with Northern Ireland, you know, and hopefully I will then be able to reflect going forward for club football. It's a shame, but this is the bed the FA made it, you know, decided wanted to lay in. So
yeah,
let's just hope they got it right.
No, let's hope so indeed. Time will tell on that one. Joesph, what are your thoughts on the England squad as a whole? I mean, we've touched on it there. I mean, it is a very, I don't know, the squad feels like of the past in terms of Henderson, Walker, Rashford, which struck me by surprise a little bit. Is there anything you want to analyse in the squad?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think there is a couple mistakes in a sense, but again, it's hard to read what Tuchel's really doing with that. I mean, I understand what Justin's saying, but then you've got, you know, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Jarrell Quansah, some of these players that haven't really had an England call up that have been included. I mean, again, I would have easily had Spence over Quansah personally, or you could have had him over Walker, you could have had him over, you know, a bunch of these players. So Spence, especially his versatility as well, because we've seen how good he can be at left back and we can see how good he's been at right back. So I don't see why he's not a player that would want to be utilised, especially in a tournament system when, you know, when we get to that. It seems like he'd be the perfect player with that versatility. But one of the big omissions at first was Gibbs White for me. I think he's been unbelievable. Obviously, he's come in now. I think Conor Gallagher is unlucky to miss out. I think he's doing really well for Atletico Madrid. And again, another player that's kind of, again, Jordan Henderson, what's the point? I mean, maybe, again, it's for the seniority to maybe, again, help some of these younger guys, you know, understand the meaning of playing international football. Because I think a part of that might have been lost. We saw it with, you know, these players saying they were injured on the last international break and not really wanting to almost boot up for the national team, which was quite disappointing to see. Obviously, some people might look at it different ways, but for me, I was quite disappointed to see the players were, you know, not really injured, but saying they were, so they didn't have to go on international break. But yeah, I mean, again, for me, there's players that would help England much more than some of the players, you know, again, what Harry listed. There's plenty of these players that probably shouldn't be in an England kit anymore. And there's players that have been playing well enough and deservedly should be given the opportunity, Jed Spence included. But again, it's one of those things. I guess obviously we've still got a while, you know, we've got a while until the World Cup and everything like that. So there's plenty of other opportunities for some of these players to come in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's unfortunate to see some of those players miss out. And again, for me, the biggest one was Gibbs White. I know he's come in now, which is, you know, is deserved 100%, considering how well Forest have been. I think he's been probably the most integral player for them throughout that.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally with you on that one. Simon, I come to you. Solanke, he got the call up. I was a little bit surprised by this. Are you happy for him?
Absolutely. I mean, any Spurs players that get to play for their international, for their country, you'll be happy about. It's kind of a reinformation, kind of confirms that you have a good player in some ways. But I'm thinking about, you know, Spence, and I'm hearing everything you say, and I'm not English, obviously. But I think, like you talked about the World Cup, isn't the issue with Tuchel that he doesn't really, that you don't know what kind of system he's going to play? Like if he's going to play back 3 or back 4, because it seems to me that looking at what's best for the squad. He's missing certain types of profiles just to make the way he wants to play work. Are you guys catching what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think maybe we need to see what his England team's going to be, because we haven't seen that yet. We haven't obviously experienced really a game with Tuchel. So
we'll find out on Friday.
Yeah, we'll see what he sets up. But I think as soon as you see it, there's key players missing. That there's going to be a player missing that we're all going to sit there and go, he'd be perfect for that system. Even possibly Maddison. I know that's obviously a contentious one, really, like in terms of, he's been good here and there, but he's one of those players that I don't know if England have loads and loads of players in that similar archetype. Another one for me, I didn't really mention it, but I don't think Phil Foden's had a good season at all. I think, again, he's one of those players that, okay, I understand he probably comes in off of merit from, longevity and how he's been in it. But again, he's another player that probably he shouldn't be one of the first names there because he hasn't been performing at all. But I get what you're saying, Simon, definitely.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, what's your pivot? Like, I don't see a pivot that actually works if you're really pressed. I don't see if you have, and I mean, he might want to play in a way that's really direct, and then you don't need Rice might be enough. But if he really wants to play out from the back, who's going to play? And there's a big difference between a wing back and a fullback, like fundamental stuff like that seems to be question marks for me at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say, I think Conor Gallagher is probably one of the biggest names in terms of a pivot type player. I think he does it really well for Atletico Madrid. Maybe even, I don't know, maybe Adam Wharton. I know he obviously was in the World Cup team, the Euros team before. But,
that's what I'm saying. He's not in the squad. So
yeah, exactly.
That makes a big difference.
Weird.
Like if he's probably the best player you have in that pivot role in terms of building out from the back. So he might have a plan for you guys that you don't know about, but
maybe
I have to wait and see.
We'll see.
Stuff like that makes me question what he's doing. Actually,
the one thing I would say though, one good thing about some of the Tottenham players going, they can't get injured, so at least they won't get injured on international duty. Hopefully, I probably shouldn't have said that because they're going to get injured in training now.
I was going to say, why are you saying that? They'll find a way.
Yeah, they will find a way. Isn't Romero going for Argentina?
Yeah,
he's going there.
Great one.
Let's not get into it. It's a hot topic.
No, we had that last week, didn't we? Yeah, we'll leave that for now.
The comment section will explode.
Yeah, absolutely. It will. That's for sure. Especially when I clip the show after as well. Let's move on to Fulham. Come on then. There's a lot to get into. Before we do, Spurs starting 11. Clearly the wrong one in the end, but it was Vicario, Doggy, Davis, Romero, Spence, midfield of Gray, Basuma and Bentancur, and a front line of Johnson, Solanke and Tell. Here is our substitutes. A little bit more depth for us in this game. Kinski, Porro, Van der Ven, Sarr, Bergevall, Maddison, Son, Odebear, and Solanke. So that is the substitutes. I'll tell you what, Joesph, I kick it off with you. What are your thoughts, at the time on that lineup? Were you happy with what you saw? Because it was really wholesale changes, wasn't it, from Alkmaar?
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I understood it when I first saw it because I was thinking, okay, he's now finally got squad depth. Let's use it. So he's thinking, okay, we just had a game on Thursday. We've got a game on Sunday. Let's switch it up. He believes in trusts these players. Let's switch it and let's have some of these players get a rest. I love seeing Archie Gray in the middle. I think everyone's been waiting for that, waiting for him to really get that starting role as that defensive midfielder type player. And he obviously got that opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, I understood it to a certain extent, but I also did think you got to be careful here because Fulham are a decent side. They're going to give you a great game. You know what you get with Fulham. You always get professional performance from each player on the pitch. And again, it was, so I don't know, I was kind of caught in two minds. It was great to see the depth we had on that bench. Looking at all those players that could come off the bench, you're finally thinking, wow, we've got some impact here. If we need a change, we've got that. So I was kind of caught in two minds. But yeah, it was, I was still optimistic to a certain extent. I would say I was optimistic though, but I didn't watch the game. I went to my mates. We watched the Chelsea-Arsenal game, which was even worse. But that's where I'm at with Tottenham right now. I can't even be bothered to watch the games at the moment. I think that really proves where I am as a Tottenham fan. I'm getting to the point where I'm just like, I'm not desperate to watch. If we're not on TV, I'm not going to go out my way to watch it. And, it was just, it was one of those where I was kind of hopeful going into the game, but as soon as I saw we went 1-0 down, I was kind of just like, yeah, right, whatever.
No, fair enough. It's certainly been a really difficult season, so I can understand your thinking there. Harry, were you happy? I mean, Joseph mentions there to see Gray in that midfield finally.
Yeah, I was excited for him to get his chance. Obviously, when he arrived in the summer, he would have been thinking, "Oh, I'm going to play midfield pretty soon after joining." Obviously, he hasn't. He's been a centre half for the time he's been here, which that's kind of to say he's done an amazing job where he's played. For an 18-year-old to come in out of position, so inexperienced in the Premier League, and he's delivered. I mean, he's arguably our player of the season alongside Spence or Bergvall. Yeah, no, I was looking forward to seeing him begin in the midfield. But the one thing I did, it struck me straight away was there was no creativity in the midfield, which is going to be a massive issue because we saw against Bournemouth in the first half, there was no one to create anything. Bissouma and Bentancur are not creative. Bissouma's been struggling for form. Bentancur, I think he's fallen off since his injuries, unfortunately. Gray, tries his best to get up and down, but he's just not a Maddison. He's not a Kulu in the middle. But then, in terms of the lineup as a whole, I think it's great that we're resting players because Europa League is the main goal. The Premier League's done. It's whether we can win the Europa League, then we get Champions League next year, which would be a miracle after the season we've had. But it was it was a shame to see to see no creativity in the midfield. But I'm glad Gray got his chance. And by by the sounds of it, he wasn't too bad. But then obviously when Romero went off, he dropped back into that defensive role, and then obviously took place for Maddison. So, but no, I think as the season comes to an end, and then beginning of next year, hopefully if our players stay fit, we should see him. I mean, I'd like to see him start more games in midfield because I'd like to see Gray, Bergvall, Maddison. If it's up to me, that's the three I would play week in, week out. If they all stay fit.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's a really good three.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harry. And I totally agree with everything you say. But one thing I would say, Harry, is do you think that those, what I'd probably call wholesale changes or wholesale rotation was necessary when, international break? And I will say it, the fans won't like it, but, 17, 18 days off. I know it's not for a lot of players go away on international duty, but is it for most, because they're not currently, I'm afraid, good enough to be called up. There's still a lot being called up, don't get me wrong. But do you think it was needed to be done? Or do you think it's just a quick turnaround and players just coming back from injury and rotation was necessary?
Well, do you know what? When the lineup came out, I was like, yeah, good. He's rested players, which is a must. But then I, straight away thought, oh no, it's international break. And then the realization came to me that he should have played slightly stronger team because not everyone that's been called up to the national squad is going to play a full 180 minutes in 2 games. For example, I don't think that for the likes of Van der Ven, I don't think he's been called up to the Dutch squad, has he?
No,
I thought there was a report that he hasn't been called up, or is someone else, but I don't think Van der Ven's been called up.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't think he's been called up.
Yeah. And obviously that's frustrating now to look back on, whereas he could definitely have played the full 90 minutes in that game or even started and played the first hour. And that would, or even come on actually around the hour mark, even if he replaced Romero's, then we've still got one of our 2 best on the pitch. I think I would like to see Sarr come on, in place of Bissouma and then put Maddison on because, and I have to say it, Brennan Johnson he's utterly useless, unfortunately. And he was taken off at half time again, but he's just not good enough for us at the moment. He has a few tap-ins a season, and then people will start saying, "Oh, he's brilliant. He's great. He's this and that." But that's all he's got. He's a one-trick pony with a few back post tap-ins. He doesn't beat his man. He's got electric pace, which he used at Forest to beat his men, but he just doesn't do that for us. I'm not sure if he's been told to do that by Ange, but he doesn't take on his man. He doesn't win any duels. He goes back more than he goes forward, and it's just a waste of a position when Wilson Odobert wants to take on his man. And I'd rather have a winger that will lose it a few times, but be brave to take on his man than a winger who is so passive and goes back and across the whole time, because that's Conte ball. Ange ball isn't going back and across. Ange ball is going forward, hitting them hard, pressing high. And Johnson seems to be like he's adapted more to Conte ball, having not even played under Antonio Conte, which is really frustrating, especially when he gets a lot of hate, unnecessary hate at times. But I can't blame fans now because this is Tottenham. This isn't Forest anymore. Spurs are a club who need quality wingers, and I don't think Johnson's good enough for us.
No, he hasn't stepped up at all. Totally with you. In theory, he should really suit the system, shouldn't he? But I think you're just spot on. And we'll get on to him in a few other performances, good and bad, a little bit later. But I want to move on to the game itself. And Simon, I'll come to you. Because at half-time, it was 0-0. What were your thoughts on that first half? It was quite poor, wasn't it?
Let me look at the stats here. I mean, to me, I think it's interesting to talk about the lineup. I agree with a lot of the things that the guys are saying. No creativity, good to rotate. There's an international break, which changes a little bit. How you prioritize. I think if there wasn't a international break, I think a lot of fans would be more okay with experimenting or giving players
Definitely.
time on the pitch, uh, with the aim of saving players for the next European game. There
Sam,
was
can,
an
can I tell
international
you?
game,
Can I tell you
and
my
so
frustration?
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but my frustration was this time last year when we played Fulham, we got the midfield completely wrong and got that balance wrong, and we lost, as we know, 3-0 there before the international break. And I feel that in this game, we got the midfield balance wrong again. That's the frustrating thing. It just feels like that carbon copy from last year, where we all sort as fans looked at that and went, "Where's the creativity coming from? Where's that balance?" And I just think that was a big problem in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I do think we can all acknowledge that his priority is not to get is injuries and to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a similar situation again with injuries returning, especially with him knowing how important European games are for his stay, his
Yeah.
continued career at Spurs, but also what we as fans want the most, which is to go as far as possible in that tournament and hopefully win that trophy. So from that standpoint, I understand and I hear what everyone is saying. I do think though that just looking at the players that were on the pitch, and to your question about what I thought about the first half, I think we had like one shot on goal. I think they had the ball more than us. Basically what I'm saying is I think the players on the pitch should have played a lot better. I think there was a lot of players on the pitch that you just look at and you go, what's going on with Bissouma? Like, what's going on with Bentancur? Like, if this is what we can expect from experienced players on the pitch, like in this squad, like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Like, what are they doing here? And I think that's what I found the most frustrating. That I didn't think Fulham had any chances, but I also thought we created nothing. It was basically just a boring standoff for at least 45 to 60 minutes until Romero went off and our backline fell apart. I
Yeah.
mean, look at
We'll get on to that. It was a disaster.
yeah, and I mean I posted this straight after the game, looking at the three last goals that we conceded. We conceded them all after we made changes to the CB pairing mid game, and so both AZ and Fulham looked like not scoring at all in both those games. But the moment we made changes, and I think we can debate, if that was the right way to play it. I do understand the reasoning. You want Romero and Van de Ven to get minutes, and they help us win games, but they can't play full minutes, and so that's there's priorities and choices to be made there. But I do think that the consequences was clear. Like when we took them off or when we made those changes, we made, schoolboy mistakes in and around the box, which led to us conceding. And in this game, I didn't think Fulham played it very, very well. I just thought we kind of did it to ourselves. And so I was disappointed with the performance. And I think these are the performances that I think go against Ange, like that I really count when we have a squad, players are back, and we still lose or we play inconsistently. I think it's a fairer measurement. I do think that you have to acknowledge the fact that Danso isn't there, Kulusevski is injured, Madison, he wants to save him. So there are, context and circumstances that are, have real life impacts for Ange in the decisions he has to make. But I do think it's bad to lose the way we did in games where we should win, and I think that's one of those games we should win.
Yeah, No, it is. You're spot on, and I think we'll get into Ange just a little bit later. But Justin, there was 2 changes at half time. They needed to happen, didn't they? Because we were just poor in that first half, and I think Ange got that team wrong again, like maybe he did the other day as well.
Well, I think to be fair, I've heard what people have said about resting players, fitness, things like that. Not being funny, there's 18 days. There's 18 days between now and the next game. You know, this is a game where he's, I think, stumbled on Thursday. He stumbled across a couple of players that everyone looked at and thought, oh, I wasn't expecting he could do that. You know, nobody was sitting there expecting Odegaard to do what he did, you know, in that game and play the way that he did. So I sort of looked at it and I thought, well, that's one he surely should be playing. You know, he came out, I think, after the game and was critical of Basuma because I think, as he said, something along the lines of there's been multiple times where he hasn't been good enough or he hasn't been consistent at his level. But why are you picking him? Why is it you're turning around in games where we should, you know, I mean, to me, that just sends such a poor message because it's basically saying, I don't trust. And when you look at what he is doing in terms of the likes of Mikey Moore and other players like that who can't even seem to get anywhere near the squad now, you know, I just found it baffling, you know, the fact that he is critical enough to turn around and say about certain players, but then start them. And then, as we saw when he brought on Lucas Bergvall, you could see the difference it was making with regards to that. You know, Son with Johnson. You know, it just, there's certain parts that I do look at, and I think when you've been, you know, when you've stumped, sometimes as a manager, you will stumble upon something, right? And this is a guy who had stumbled potentially on having Spence on the left and having Odegaard on the right. So why was it he couldn't turn round and go, well, do you know what? It's worked. Why not bring that into Fulham? Basuma isn't playing well, so I need to show him that he needs to have a refocus because I'm not just going to pick him for the sake of it. Even if it means I start Bergvall for an extra game, you've got that 18 days. Why is it it's taken him, you know, another game, another 45 minutes to work out Basuma isn't clearly good enough for Spurs? You know, why is it that it's taken 45 minutes to work out, well, maybe this experiment with Johnson, you know, maybe he needs to realise that he needs a break and things like that. So when I saw at halftime those 2 changes that were made, I thought, okay, you know, 45 minutes late, but he's made them. And then obviously he then decided, well, I've made some good changes, so I make some shocking changes, which we'll get on to shortly, and then cost us the game.
Yeah, we're going to now. You led me on perfectly, so cheers, Justin, for that. Joesph, 68th minute, Maddison comes on for Romero. I mean, this substitution changed the game, didn't it? Whether you stand with Ange or his in-game management in general or in this game, this was massive. This was a turning point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a couple of things quickly just about, you know, what people have mentioned. I understand people's obviously frustration with the international break coming up. I think some of the players you do really need to manage their minutes, especially Romero and Van der Ven. I appreciate, you know, again, this is a game before an 18-day break, but those players are coming back from serious long-term injuries. They've just played on Thursday, some serious minutes as well. You cannot just throw them straight into another game against Fulham. If one of them goes off after 30 minutes...
Can I just add there, not to interrupt you, Joe, just to add there, Odegaard has also come back from a long-term injury, played two 90-minute games with 4 days in between them. So resting him, you could also make an argument.
100%. I completely agree. So I understand people's frustrations, you know, with an 18-day break, but that shouldn't really be the thing you look at. You should think of, they've just played Thursday, a very intense match of football that mattered a lot. And again, and there was a lot of hard work put in by some of those players. Odegaard, I thought, was excellent against AZ Alkmaar. And for him to just come in and start again against Fulham, I think it was the right decision to rest him. The same with players like Romero and Van der Ven. They needed to have moments where they come off.
Romero what about definitely. Madison, then? You know, Madison's put his first consistent performance in for a long while, and surely you build on that confidence, no?
And that's where I agree. That's where I'm frustrated with the selection. The midfield, you know, going into that. You do look at it on face value and think, where is any creativity? I think one of the big problems Tottenham have is we don't have another creative midfielder other than Maddison. We don't have another creative midfielder. Bergvall
You have
is a good.
Kulusevski, but he's
Yeah,
injured.
Kulusevski.
So-
Yeah, exactly. In terms of like right now, in terms of that, a proper 10, we don't have that. Bergvall's more of an 8 in terms of kind of powering up and down the pitch, but we don't have that person to unlock a defense. Create a nice pass through. You don't have that, and you definitely don't have that in Bentancur and Basuma. And I agree with what Justin's saying about some of these players and what Harry's saying, like Brennan Johnson, Bentancur, Basuma. All three of these players are kind of proving that they're coming towards the end of their Tottenham careers because they're not good enough. They're not showing any kind of quality. But to be sympathetic of Ange to a certain extent, you've got to use what you've got in front of you. And until we can get these players out in the summer, unfortunately, Basuma and Bentancur are our two most senior midfield options. And sometimes when you've got other players that need to have a break, you've got to throw these players out there. And all you need them to do is give a 5, 6, 7 out of 10 each week. We're not asking them to completely dictate every single game you play. But unfortunately, against Fulham, they didn't even give us that. They didn't give us that. Bentancur and Basuma were dreadful in that first half. From everything I've seen, passing, execution of just simple things that you expect any professional footballer to be able to do, they couldn't do it. Coming on to the substitution that you mentioned, I think it's right. Romero does need to come off. It's just in the position you're in with the game, I think it's just a very unfortunate one where Romero is our only real recognised centre-back basically in the squad at that point, other than maybe Van
this
de
is
Ven.
my question, just to throw it back to you, Joe.
Yeah, of course.
This is what I was thinking. I was like, okay, so Romero is in this, gray area. I'm thinking like Ange now. He's in this gray area. So to me, you go, can he play 90 minutes? And if he can't play 90 minutes, do you go for like Gray and Davis? Is that the better decision in this case? Because I actually do think that might have been more, provided more stability. Because to me, it felt like that first goal in and around the box, everyone's looking at each other. No one knows who's going for the ball. No one knows where they're supposed to be. Gray has played midfield this whole game. Now he's in the center back. I mean, that's where I think the confusion comes from. But it's still not I don't think it's like a clear, decision to go, oh, I have Romero, but I don't want to risk him, so let's rest him. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
No, 100%.
Like, what should he have thought? Because Ange did throw out this, it's easy to, after the fact, kind of, I don't know if you guys listen to the pressers, but he made this whole point about it's easy to be wise after the fact, which is what we as fans do. But if we take us back before the game, what was the best lineup? What was the best decision?
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think it's important to recognise game state. I think that's one thing that I've been quite disappointed with Ange throughout his kind of tenure at Tottenham. I feel like he really doesn't recognise game state very well. There's moments where he makes decisions and you think, okay, I understand that on face value, but look at the position we are in the game. There's this amount of minutes left. We're at this score line. Is that really the right decision to make right now? Probably not. And that's where I understand. So in the context of this game, you think, well, okay, Romero comes off after, what was it, like 60 minutes, 65 minutes. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but okay, still 0-0.
Yeah.
And we're in a position where we need to try and get a goal. Maybe the right decision in that moment was just to exchange one midfielder for the other rather than looking to take off, so in terms of, was Bentancur still on the pitch at that point? I think maybe just bringing Maddison in for Bentancur. Gray still at DM, kind of something like that, rather than changing the whole thing and moving around all these different parts and Archie Gray moving into defense, all that kind of thing.
Or just make that decision before, not to, because he put himself in that situation, right? He put himself in a position there. He put in Romero knowing that he can't play the full game. That should make him think, oh, that could be decisive.
But surely the safe option is to bring on Van de Ven. I don't know why you say to Gray, okay, I'm going to shift your position, because Gray's got his midfield head on 100%. And he's got a player who's dealing with doing an excellent job.
You have two lefties, neither who is used to play on the right.
Well,
so I think
it's not being funny. I think both are competent and able to play that right centre back. Of course, it's not
ideal,
but
it's still the same thing. It's still,
I think Ange deserves all the criticism, for me anyway, coming his way for this, because that's what you take the check for as a manager. And I'll be the first to give him credit for when his in-game management is right. because he has got it right. And there's several times, I think in particular last season, not as much this year, but it still happened, where games have been turned around because of effective substitutions he made. That does happen. We've seen it with
And I
Maddison,
totally
we've seen
agree.
it with
I'm
Sarr,
just
with
saying.
Johnson.
I totally agree. I'm just saying, and I'm critical. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying he should have seen that it's not ideal to make yourself a victim of having to make a decision when the game might be on the line. So I'm totally agreeing with you. I'm just saying we should acknowledge that there were no really good choices when it came to how to add creativity, how to not mess with the back line. And so he might have made the wrong decision, but I also think that, we're still not in a situation where there were a lot of good decisions to make. And mainly my thing is what Joe was talking about, which is for 60, 65, I don't know when they scored, but for a long time in that game, we had the opportunity to play a lot better with the players on the pitch, and they didn't. So I'm just asking, like, to what extent should we look at the players? Like, Bentancur and Zuma are clearly the senior midfielders on the pitch.
I completely agree. I think the biggest thing I can take away from it is, again, it's that evaluating game state. You think about the position we were in when we made these changes. We were in the ascendancy. I mean, I know we haven't spoke about the second half too much, but we're in the ascendancy. We're looking like the team on top right now, and Fulham aren't having that many chances. So you're thinking, okay, well, Romero, Ben Davis, the back line is actually looking quite steady right now. And the midfield maybe still isn't ticking, but the attack is looking promising, with Solanke having a couple of chances, with Matthias Tell kind of creating different things. So you're thinking, okay, Maddison, our chief creative player right now, he should probably come in and he can maybe get us over the line to get the first goal in the game. Well, let's make that one decision then. Let's make that one sub, take off one midfielder for another, not change everything else, not completely alter the whole kind of team cohesion and chemistry, and just make that one change for him to come in and maybe unlock that door. But instead, what he's done is he's taken off Romero because he feels like he needs a rest. So Romero comes off. Archie Gray slots into defence. Then you've got the midfielders kind of having to almost all rotate round.
Everything's changed.
And it's too much change in one moment, especially when the game is such on a tight edge and you're in the balance when it's 0-0. Again, we were really pushing forward. It looked like we were in the ascendancy to go and win the game.
We were,
and then you make one change and it disrupts the whole chemistry of the team. And again, it's just where I've been critical of Ange in 2 points on this, with this game state kind of option, in terms of, like, sometimes he's not proactive enough and he leaves it too late, and then Tottenham are out of the chance of even getting back into the game. Or sometimes he doesn't, he's in this example, he's too proactive and he's going, I can change all of these things all at once, and it completely breaks up the whole team cohesion. So it's tough. I mean, it's a tough job for any manager, but this is why you're the manager of Tottenham Hotspur. You're expected to be able to make these decisions and do the right things. And for me, Ange has never really
I totally agree.
In those.
Fair points.
Thank you to both of you. Before we move on to the rest of the second half and everything that happened in the game, Justin, I'll come to you. What did you make of how Romero done? Because I thought it was really good, and I think it's no coincidence that he comes off the pitch and we can see 2 goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's again a questioning of Ange really with regards to this, because we went from a defence that had the experience and the quality to sort of help manage the threats, that we were going to face, in terms of, why they brought Muniz, and, obviously when you saw the, what they have got in the Adama Traore, you knew what we were facing even before that. So and it's really telling when you can see the fact that he had done such a good job that Silva realised that Jimenez was being, very ineffective in the game. And then obviously the moment he took, that Ange had taken off Romero and Muniz comes on, sure enough, we're then going back to, again, an 18-year-old central midfielder playing in the position that he's having to adapt to, rather than an Argentinian who we know full well will play probably 180 minutes for Argentina, or a Dutch international who was on the, on the bench who didn't come on at all. I just didn't understand any of that, because to me, I get trying to win the game. I get trying to push on and get that, but there's points where it's almost like you're cutting your nose off to spite your face, because you're making our defensive options weaker by trying to go and win that game. And clearly Fulham saw an opportunity, because rather than dealing with Romero and Davies at the back to try and attack, they were dealing with Davies and Archie Gray. So you're always going to fancy yourself more. And to be fair, it probably gave them a lift, because what we're basically saying is to Fulham, we think we've got this game in the bag, so we're not going to risk our two best centre backs. We're going to play a guy who, as much sentiment as we like, I don't think deserves a new contract. I don't. If we give Ben Davies a new contract, it just again shows the club isn't strong enough to move on from this and get the star quality players in that it should. And a central midfielder. So of course, was I shocked to see that Fulham had scored? Not really, because we had given them an incentive to go and attack them, because we basically said we think a midfielder and an aging centre back is good enough against your attack. And we've seen the spoiler alert, no, they're not.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to quickly say on that as well, sorry, Harry, to interrupt, but I'd agree with Justin in the sense that I like Ben Davies, and I think he's been really good at moments this season. I didn't think he was playing well in this game. From all the highlights I've seen, it looked like he made a couple of different mistakes in the game, and he wasn't really dealing with the Fulham attack very well. To take off Romero and leave him now with an 18-year-old, I thought was more of a bit of a mistake in terms of, Romero was the one who kind of kept that defence more solid. There was moments where Ben Davies was making little mistakes. I remember in the first half, there was one where a ball was almost coming straight through to Vicario. Ben Davies does kind of like an awkward clearance, because I think he's a bit worried, and it falls to Castagna, who could probably slot it away and it put it 1-0 up for Fulham. But instead, obviously, Vicario makes a save. But he didn't look his most calm self in that game. And I mean, we come on to the goals in a minute, but it showed Ben Davies was a big part of both of the goals they scored, where he wasn't, wasn't doing the best. So it's kind of, again, that kind of where players maybe aren't performing. If Ben Davies is having a great game and, he's kind of dealing with the Fulham attack very well, maybe you can make that change, because you're thinking maybe Ben Davies has got it in him today to kind of get, deal with what Fulham can throw at us. But unfortunately, I don't think we were in that position to take off Romero.
No, not at all. Totally agree.
Yeah, spot on. I think also credit to Marcus Silva, and you've all mentioned it there with
100%.
Manise coming on. I think that was a positive change for Fulham. Jimenez is doing well, but they needed Manise, and obviously good record against Tottenham. So I think a large part of it is Romero coming off, but I also think some of it is the positive change for Fulham. Both together just was disastrous. And Fulham a little bit more, even more clinical in front of goal. They could have had more than that. But the first goal in the game did come from Manise, 78th minute. So it was a late goal to unlock the deadlock. Odebear was robbed of possession, Harry. Do you think he's got to do better there? Is it like an system problem, though, that maybe he's told to try and pass out, play it through the lines rather than go long, clear his lines?
I think, to be honest, most of it is just his naive. He's quite naive, because he's obviously young. He's inexperienced in the Premier League. He's not as too many starts. So I think it was more of a lapse in concentration, to be honest. I think he was taking too long to decide what he actually wanted to do, and he didn't make up his mind quick enough. But to be fair to him, he didn't really have anyone around him. Like, that's the difference between us and Fulham at the moment, and us and any other side, is that they had the hunger to put 3 players on Odebear, because they knew that they'd win it back and then create a chance after that. It wasn't lucky, but you could just tell, by the way, from his body language, that he didn't know what to do with it in that position. And I think as a manager, that's so poor. Like, you have to instill in your players in training and warm-ups and drills that if you're under pressure in that sort of system, you have to tell them what to do with it, because just playing a system where everything is about high press and under pressure, playing out from the back, playing it risky. So I think that to not tell the players what to do in that sort of position is baffling, and it cost us again. But yeah, I mean, look, I think if it was someone like Son or Kulusevski, they might try to shield it and then win a throw-in for us. So I think Odebear was just a little bit unsure of what to do. But it's just another schoolboy error. As Simon was saying, there's too many schoolboy errors lately, which have cost us. But it wasn't just up to him. Obviously, Davies was too weak for Sessegnon's goal, and then there were other people, other players just weren't their best. So we can't just pin it down to Wilson. But it was a bit of an error, yes, and he has to make sure that that's a one-off, because that can't happen again. Because if that happens again, then teams are going to notice that we struggle playing out the back, that we struggle under pressure, and we've been caught out now. I think it was ever since that 4-1 defeat to Chelsea, we've been found out, and unfortunately, we've never been the same since. We had, unfortunate injuries and red cards, yes, but we've not seen the same Spurs after that Chelsea game. Not once. We've not seen, we weren't scared to go forward. We were, we would venture out, attack, first time passing down the wing, not afraid to put balls in the box. But now it's so hesitant. It's taking 2 or 3 touches when the passing option's on for 1 touch, and then one whip it out wide straight away. Don't wait for the players to get back. So I don't think we've ever seen full Ange Ball effect. What was the game before Chelsea? The Palace one, 2-0 away at Selhurst Park. That was the last time we saw Ange Ball in full effect for 90 minutes. So it's been obviously a long time since that now. And
even that, you could say it was one half, couldn't you? Really, you're right.
Yeah, you could, because we only actually scored the 2 in the second half, didn't we? So yeah,
probably say the City game, City away, was probably the last time we saw real Ange Ball. I mean, we absolutely dominated them that game.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, but I mean, consistently, the last time we saw it consistently in a 100%. Season was that Palace game. But yeah, no,
in the first 10 games of his tenure, the first 10 games, that was the best. That's the best we've seen of Ange. That really proves a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I suppose we're going to see either Ange will find a way to win the Europa League for us, and then. But that's the thing. I mean, if we win the Europa League, is that enough to keep him in his job? Because I feel like if the Europa League comes, not all of it is going to be based through sheer quality. Some of it will be luck. And I feel like during the group stages, the draw at Roma, the 2-2 at home, we had a good first period, but then towards the end, we were very, very fortunate we didn't come away with a loss from that game, because Dybala was putting in cross after cross after cross and just causing so many problems for us. And Galatasaray away, we were poor. If Galatasaray was still in this competition and say we had them next instead of Frankfurt, there's not a chance we win that away leg. Or get a point from that, because we were just played off the park in so many different ways by Galatasaray. We struggled away at Ferencvaros until the 2 late goals from Johnson and I think it was Sarr in that game. But look, I think we're going to see
around that.
Yeah, no, a lot of injuries, definitely. Yeah, but yeah, it's a matter of time, I think, now for Ange. If we win the Europa League, great, keep him in his job. But I think just keep him till the end of the season and then reconvene over the summer and then go from there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Harry. I'm very keen to get into the Ange discussion in a little bit. Simon, I'll come to you. Was Manise allowed too much time here to turn, to shoot, and to really place the ball past Vicario?
I think someone else. I didn't see that, so I think someone else might be better equipped to answer that question.
Yeah, no worries. That's fine. Thank you, Justin. What did you make of that Fulham goal? Spurs got to do better from a defensive point of view.
Yeah, but as we saw, when they took off Romero, they sensed blood, and they took full advantage. It was as simple as that, really. So I wasn't surprised. I think it was just a case of that. Luckily, it was only 2, because I wouldn't have been surprised if it had been a lot worse.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And he scores against Tottenham once again. Joesp's second goal for Fulham came in the 88th minute through former Spurs player Ryan Sessegnon. I mean, he's second spell now at Fulham. I mean, it's a very Spursy thing to do, wasn't it? To let him score.
bit of poetic justice, really, wasn't it, for him to get that goal. I mean, to be fair, the one thing I think you've got to say, it was two moments of quality from Fulham. I thought the Muniz goal, as much as Tottenham didn't defend too well, he stuck it away really well. Bottom corner, Vicario had no chance of getting to that ball. And the same with Sessegnon's goal. Again, Ben Davies quite disappointing with how he didn't really battle very well with Sessegnon. It felt like Sessegnon had the better of him after he came on, but a great finish from him. And it's a shame we didn't really get to see that much in a Spurs shirt, because I always thought there was a player in Sessegnon, and obviously injuries plagued his time at Tottenham. We never really got to see the best of him. I remember he scored a goal, was it away against Bayern Munich? And I thought, oh, here we go. This is where we're finally going to get a bit of Ryan Sessegnon and start seeing him kind of come into the team. But he could just never stay fit and never really get the real opportunities to kind of become a staple in our side. So, you know, I'm happy to see him doing well at Fulham. I want him to have a great career because I think he's a great person, a great player, a good professional. He's always seems to have worked really hard to trying to get onto the pitch. And but yeah, in terms of a Tottenham point of view, it was a shame to see him score against us and to kind of bury that game. But for Fulham, I think you've got to look at it as you know, a good two moments that, you know, to change the game. I think, you know, Barney's been saying it in the chat. Obviously, he's a Fulham fan. He's been saying it in the chat about how it was a game with very little quality throughout it. And then towards the end of the game, Fulham came up with 2 moments of quality. When we had those moments, we didn't take them, did we? You know, Solanke had a moment where he should have scored, put the ball away a couple of times. And we didn't have the quality we needed in that moment. So, yeah, fair enough to Fulham. I think, you know, you can't complain too much about them winning that game. But again, it brings us on to that kind of wider conversation of Ange Postecoglou and his tenure at Tottenham, doesn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I'd take nothing away, I think, from the finish from Sessegnon. It was really, you know, nicely done, but I think that we've got to look at ourselves at this. But Simon, you know, I want to say you're happy for Sessegnon. Of course, you know, we didn't want this if we didn't want him scoring against us in this moment, in this game, at this time. But it's nice to see him, you know, doing well, coming on and having a good effect on the game. And I thought we took this really well, out-muscled Davis. And it was a really nice finish.
I was away getting a beer. I was, you know, trying to drink my pain away. So I missed the goal, but I saw the rerun. And I have to admit that at that point, I kind of felt like we were losing the game anyway. So just happy for him to kind of get his revenge. I don't know on who, because, I mean, he was the one that was injured his whole time at Spurs. But, no, I was mostly just happy for him. I think, like, you could kind of sense with this team, and I think I've talked about this a lot. I think, you know, the good thing with Ange Ball is that we're the protagonists, so it's always about us, how well we perform. If you compare it to, you know, Jose, where everything was about, you know, counter measuring whatever tactic the other team had. We know how we play the same way. It's about us dominating the ball and dominating what's happening on the pitch, and you could see that we weren't. Like, I think Fulham ended up with 60% of the ball, which isn't how we want to play, and they'd scored one, and we didn't feel like we were going to come back in that game, to me at least. So at that point, I was just happy someone connected with Spurs got something fun out of it. So
yeah,
he's had it tough, right? He's had a tough go of it. Like, if there's someone you kind of wish well, it's Ryan Sessegnon.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the injury seemed to have kind of plagued his career at Tottenham, like you said before. But whenever I've seen about all these injuries, he always just shows all the work he's doing. And I believe he probably was a very hard-working individual at Tottenham. Yeah. And I hope he has a good career, because I always like Sessegnon. Again, it was such a shame for him not to kind of build a career at Tottenham. But for him to go to Fulham, I hope he has a good career. I mean, I think the one thing we have mentioned how good Fulham are, but they're just such a professional outfit with Marco Silva. You know, they haven't got any like massive names around their team. You know, you look at every player, and I think they all just suit the system they play so well. And I think you just got to give a lot of credit to Fulham about what they are. Yeah, they know what they're there for.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams, I think, coaches in the Premier League that we've seen this season. I definitely think Fulham is one. Where, like, their floor is pretty high. Like,
yeah,
Brentford, Fulham, Bournemouth, Brighton.
Yeah.
Like, the coaches they have, they play in a specific identity. They have a high floor, and then like their ceiling might be capped, but you can clearly see that you're gonna have a tough game when you go up against them. And I think it's interesting because, you know, Marco Silva and Areola are two coaches that are linked to Spurs. If
we're getting to that.
And I think that's so interesting because I think Ange Ball is the opposite. It has a pretty low floor, because it's such a high. What do you
High
call it when
stakes.
high?
Quite
I
high
mean, it's a high
stakes
stakes
football.
kind of play, but the ceiling is much higher. Like
Mm.
if you get the players that can play that system, it's a pretty dominant way of playing. So the ceiling is higher, but the floor, as we've seen this season, is lower than a lot of those coaches.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Justin, we've got to do better, though, haven't we, to defend this goal? Who's it the blame lie on? I mean, for me, I love Jed Spence, but I think he's going to have to, I'm afraid, get a little bit of blame here because he did lose Ryan Sessegnon. Yes, Davis was out muscled, but I think Ben Davis was put in a difficult position by Spence not checking over his shoulder.
I mean, I suppose if you were to be slightly critical, then yeah, it is. I think it's one of those things where you sort of look at it and, you know, you could argue with different parts. Yes, Jed could have done that. I mean, you know, could Davis have been a bit stronger with Sessegnon? You know, that comes into it as well. I just think sometimes, and it is so frustrating because of it being Sessegnon, you almost watch it and you think, that's the player we wanted to sign. You know, that was the player that when we bought him for 25 million quid in that disastrous window that came within Dombele and Lo Celso, that's the player we wanted to see. And unfortunately, what we've seen now is he's gone to Fulham. He hasn't played as many games for them, you know, but I think they are just going to use him sporadically, and I think that is how you sadly probably get the best out of him. You know, it is that case of he isn't going to give you 90 minutes week in, week out. You are going to sporadically use him in games because when he, you know, he has got that quality. So yes, could the defense have done better? Yeah, it could have, but you know, it was a fantastic strike that killed a very dull, boring, lackluster Tottenham, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think that it was poor. Harry, how do you view that goal? Is there more that we have to do? I agree with Justin that it's a nice goal from Fulham, but I personally think that it's quite poor from us defensively, quite lazy, in fact.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not the first time it's happened this season. It's just been sort of just a jog back instead of a sprint. I think in that stage, it's only 1-0. It's a game where we can still pick up a late point here and there because we've shown multiple seasons that we can always grab a point when we need to. We can claw back a few goals and even turn around, you know, some losing positions into a win. So it was frustrating, but I just think at that point, you know, it was they must be quite tired, especially Spence. Obviously, he's gone from having hardly any minutes under like the likes of Conte and Stellini, but now he's found his form under Ange, so maybe a bit of fatigue there. And then, you know, coming on to another point, I would like to see Porro maybe brought on for a few minutes to swap out Spencer to the right, take off Udogie, who's only building back his minutes himself. But look, I mean, it's I don't think it would have changed too much if we won the ball back because we didn't show any grit going forward. You know, it's 1-0 down in that stage with about 10 minutes to go or whatever it was. That game's not done yet. If we were 4-5-0 down, I get it, but we just need to be, you know, show more hunger because we don't show enough hunger in these games. The first 10 games, like Joe was saying, under Ange, that's the best we've seen of Ange ball. That's when we showed, you know, determination. We showed fight to get forward. We showed just team spirit, camaraderie and everything. But there's just none of that now. And obviously the people say, yeah, but, you know, Bergvall tripped should have been a penalty. I think there was enough in it. But even if it was a penalty, that's just through a dodgy foul from Calvin Bassey, who was solid all games. So that wouldn't have been through any sort of, you know, good team play. That would have been through a penalty. Yeah. So there just wasn't enough attacking in that. And the one thing that I talk to my dad quite often about is he's always said that no one will ever replace Kane. And obviously we can all agree on that. But Solanke has to score that, the one that Maddison chested down to him, because Kane would not have missed that. Those are the ones where Kane scores that and you've nicked yourself a point, and then, you know, you've got the momentum to push on for a winner. So that's where Solanke will always just, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, Solanke is a good player and he's definitely better than Richarlison. I'm definitely, you know, glad when I see him in the starting 11 because his physical presence is there, his work rate is there, but they're ones that you have to score, you know, an established striker. The price tag we paid for him was quite high, so you have to score those ones.
Agree with you.
And then Blaine Scarlett. What's that, sorry?
Yeah, totally. Sorry, yeah, totally agree with you.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously Scarlett came on. When I saw him getting, prepped to come on, I thought he might have taken Solanke off, but it was clear he was just throwing everything at it. We're drawing a Bentancur for Scarlett, just throwing everything forward, and we still couldn't find a goal, which is a bit of a concern with 2 strikers on the pitch, a few wingers, Maddison. So it is a bit of a worry because I knew going into that game, I didn't expect anything else. Unfortunately, I saw the lineup and I thought, yeah, he's resting a few players. He knows that this isn't, the players won't be taking this as seriously as the Europa League because they know that the Europa League's the only shot left of a trophy. And I think Ange is sort of saving his own bacon here in terms of that statement. He said how he doesn't usually win things, he always wins things. Well, he has to live up to that. And if that's going to mean resting key players for league games so he can win the Europa League, he's going to do that. And he's a stubborn character. He's not going to be told otherwise. And I saw a comment just a second ago actually about Matthias Tell going over to the fans, and the thing that really frustrated me with that is why isn't Son or Maddison or Romero dealing with that? It's taken a 19-year-old player who's on loan, who's not even here at the club permanently yet. He's been here about 2 or 3 months, who's going over, backing Ange and saying, we need to be together in this. And, you see it from Son and Maddison on their posts saying, this isn't good enough, we'll turn it around. But actions speak louder than words. We've seen this. We've heard these words so many times. And it gets to a point where really great.
Yeah.
Show it on the pitch because it's all it's all good and well putting it on an Instagram story 3 hours after the game saying we'll turn this form around, but we haven't. We've seen that after the defeat Ipswich at home. Well, where is it? Because we've only got worse from then. So we never see these actions turned around. But Son has to have a good look at himself because ever since he's given the captain's armband, he's not been the same. You can argue the first 10, 15 games under Ange at the start, yeah, he was superb, but he's not a captain. Maddison's not a captain. Romero is a warrior. He's a fighter. But again, I don't think he's got the coolness or temperament that captains have to do that. And even if they do, one of those 3, if not all of them, have to be going over there to the fans and trying to, restore some sort of peace because it shouldn't take a 19-year-old who's on loan at the club. He's not Spurs through and through. He's been here since January. So it really frustrated me as why isn't one of our senior players going over there?
Yeah. You make a really good point. So thank you for highlighting that, and that's something we'll definitely have to get on to. But in this game, it ended full time. Fulham 2, Spurs 0. Another London derby defeat for Spurs. 15th Premier League defeat of the season, as I said in the intro, and a 19th defeat in all competitions. We sit 14th in the Premier League, really not far away from 16th, 17th place, and that is extra concerning. We've lost 50% of all our Premier League games this year. And our results before an international break this season have been a 2-1 defeat against Newcastle, a 3-2 defeat away to Brighton where we're 2-0 up, a 2-1 loss at home to Ipswich, that was with a fully fit team, and a 2-0 loss in this game against Fulham. So our appalling record for the international break continues. This was an opportunity to make it 3 consecutive away wins in a row, and we didn't deliver at all. Justin, I know you have to go, so the last question I will ask you is, what are your kind of overall thoughts now the dust has settled? Who's solely to blame for this defeat?
I mean, look, as you can see by the T-shirt, I'm not a fan of the owners, and we're not going to get into that because I don't think this result is a reflection on them. I know there's obviously a protest planned coming up soon, so obviously if anyone's interested, that's for change for Tottenham, so do have a look with regards to that. But in context with this game alone, I think it has to just be on Ange because there's too much. One thing I have noticed with him is there's, through the season, there's been the excuses, the injuries, the games, all these different bits. Well, that's all gone now. We don't have this many games. And the fact that, particularly as we had 18 days before our next match, turning around and just turning around saying, "Oh, I'm going to still protect this squad and this, that, and the other," I thought was crazy because international football doesn't do that. I'd understand if it was a case of that none of those players had a game for 18 days. I'd get that. But as we know, Romero's going to go off to Argentina. What I think they saw, there was like 12 players so far, that are going to go off to international duties. So why is it that he was so worried about fitness when he's almost at times run certain players into the ground? We saw it with Richarlison. We saw it when he brought back Romero for the Chelsea, and Van de Ven for that Chelsea game that was completely pointless. So to me, I genuinely saw things from the Alkmaar game that made me think, if he, he's had this fall into his lap. He's had a situation where Odegaard, he's tried on the right, it's come off. He's tried it with Bergvall as a mainstay in the middle. It's come off. But yet there were things that were done through that game that I would have to sit there and say, you've cost us the points, and the problem being is that you look at his demeanor, you look at his attitude, you look at how he reacts to the criticism from fans, and how he reacts to when journalists ask him about his job, because he doesn't seem to accept the fact that really he's only here to win the Europa League. That is it now, because there's no other manager under this ownership that has had the team 14 to this position and still been there, right? From start of the season to now. So, I've seen in some of the comments about we need to give him time. But when you look at what he's being given and also how he's been treated, he isn't the right man for the job. Yeah, because clearly where the club has decided it wants to go is younger talent. It wants to go with building sort of a hub of players like Mikey Moore, Odegaard, others that have come through the youth, Bergvall, Gray, Vuskovic, all of these players. And yet, as we've seen, for Ange's system, for Ange Ball to work, players need to tick the boxes for his system. So if you're going on the base of what Tottenham want, you really need somebody who's versatile, someone who is prepared to give players a chance, prepared to be adaptable when it's needed, rather than just turning around and saying, I've got plan A, and if plan A don't work, to do plan A better, but then doesn't like it when people question the fact he doesn't develop with those things
and can't take any kind of criticism or
and that to me I do find disappointing, because the amount of times he has been criticized about things but has been sort of quite get angry with regards to I find that very disappointing, because
he has a lot to say when we win, like Alkmaar, all this. He makes some really valid points, I think, about how managers treat in general, but then he's nothing in the interview after the game.
But then to be fair, we say that, but we've seen this season people be critical of Pep. We've seen people after the Carabao Cup final be critical of Slot, even though
they both handled it a lot better.
Title, so I don't see, and this is what I find frustrating now. We're seeing a guy who has stepped away from certain principles, like Mikey Moore. I feel so sorry for, because we got him to sign a contract and then he's been dumped back into the under-21s. Will Lancashire, who has been now dumped off to West Brom. We're seeing a setup that the club is trying to do, and whether we agree with it or not, at the end of the day, until we can get them out, that is our owners, so that's irrelevant. The fact of it being is that if you have been given a blueprint by the club and you don't then stick to that blueprint, it has to work. You have to be spot on. And I don't believe he has, and I don't believe he is. And as much as I was so Ange in, I am at that point where I'm sorry to say, the moment we get destroyed by Frankfurt, because as I said to you before we went on air, I've watched a lot of Frankfurt, and yes, they've lost Mamouche, which is that's a tough one to lose, but they are a very good team. They're fourth in Bundesliga, which is a tough league, as we've seen by how the German clubs are performing in Europe at the moment. To me, I sort of look at that and I think, what's left? The moment we go out of Europe, what is the point? What do you, because the league's not going to get any better. You're not going to get into Europe unless you change things. And bearing in mind our next game's against Chelsea, so it'll probably be 16 defeats. We've still got to play Liverpool at some point, so that'll be 17 defeats. I haven't seen enough, but now that the excuses are gone, that he can turn this around, particularly with the blueprint he's been given. So as much as I want the owners out, I do sadly think that unless he wins the Europa League, I think it's going to be curtains for Ange.
Yeah. I agree with you. And on that note, thank you so much for coming on, Justin. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so to be fair, I usually get invited on here when Spurs lose. So the next defeat, so I'll probably get invited on after we get battered by Chelsea or Frankfurt. So I'm looking forward to that. Cheers, Harry. But yeah, generally I'm on Twitter. So if I've said anything and people want to question it, I'm more than happy to have a debate about those sort of things. So thank you so much for having us on. And I will look forward to seeing you all soon. Nice to meet you all. Take care. All right.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Cheers, Justin.
Nice to meet you.
All right, let's keep the conversation on Postecoglou. Simon, did he get it wrong in this game?
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Couldn't find the mute button. First of all, I think a lot of the criticism I hear about Ange and how he's spoken about, like, it's really disrespectful and ridiculous. Actually, I think there's a lot of valid criticism. I have question marks about him as like an elite coach, which comes down to very specific things, like some of the things that Joe mentioned about game state, about adjustments, about the details, stuff like that, about rest defense, really specific tactical fundamental stuff. But I do think, like, to claim that we're totally healthy and that we have, a squad, no squad issues right now is, to me, rings totally false. So I just wanted to say that because I thought, a lot of the things I just heard really wrong untrue to me, or at least exaggerated. I do respect everyone who are critical of Ange, but like this game, I think the team he put out on the pitch is better than the team on the other side. Like, I think, you could talk about creativity, you could talk about, all sorts of things about the selection and the subs, but I still think the team that was put out
He's got to
on
do
the
better,
pitch
of course.
for
Yeah,
60 minutes should have won that game.
100%.
So to me, that and they didn't, and so that's what lost us the game. I don't think the tactics what was wrong, because I didn't think we got dominated. I think we had.
What's your reason then? Do you think for this? Because it's been going on for a long while now. These consistent bad performances. It can't just all be on injuries, can it? Other teams have adapted and coped well. I don't believe that the world is against us. And I'm not having a go here. It's a genuine question. When do you say that? Look, enough is enough. We've lost too many games for a club like Spurs. When is that point? Is it losing every game from now to the end of the year? Is that enough?
I think again, when you say it's just injuries, this is the worst injury crisis in Spurs history, and I think that
but why?
detail. It's not just.
My question is why? I think that's down to the way we play and the way we train.
And again, if that's your claim, you have to back that up with something. So just saying it's because of how we play, there's a lot of teams that play like us. Areola plays like us. A lot of teams.
I don't think quite as bold though.
I'm sorry.
I don't think I don't know if I agree. I don't think a lot of teams do play quite as bold as we do. I think that's why that we suffer, and I think that's why we're quite predictable.
Sure, but again, if you're gonna say that, again, you keep switching the argument. So my claim here is, if you say that how we play is why we get so many injuries,
I think so.
You have to back that up with something, or is that's just
the significant evidence players getting injured with hamstring injuries, or players coming out of training sessions and getting injured. I think that's sufficient evidence to go, look, there's something not right here. The fact that players are getting injured 3 or 4 times in a season and having to be taken off halfway through a game, I think you've got a massive problem on your hands. So when you've got Bournemouth, the prime example, Areola, that have adapted perfectly with injuries, and we and no better now with players back, I think that's alarm bells.
But again, that's an example. That's not. If you're going to say
you're
that,
not going to have evidence the other way, though, are you? We're not there in person. We don't know what's going wrong. We can only speculate and imagine. But
you have to allow me to respond to what you just said.
Yeah,
you have to allow me to respond. So my thing here is, if you say how Ange plays is what's causing all the injuries, you have to look at his history of coaching and point to all the times that he's had
Injuries
similar
after
amounts of
injuries.
injuries.
All the time.
So that's what you have to do. You have to say, look at here. He had it at Celtic. He had it at Yokohama. He had it when he coached. Like you have to show it through the history of how he coached.
Yeah.
So my point is that you can't show that. So if
I think
the
I can.
team has a lot of has a lot of injuries during one season, that's like saying how got a lot of injuries last season. That's because how he plays, and that's not sustainable. And to compare it with a team that plays once a week and say, oh, they can handle it better. Yeah, but they don't play 3 times a week. So it's like
We
comparing
won't have
apples
to
to
worry about that
oranges.
because under this manager, we'll be playing once a week because the way we're playing. It's defeat
Again, now
after
you're
defeat, and we
moving the
won't be in
goalpost
Europe.
again. Now you're making it about something else.
Well, yeah, but if we look at Postecoglou's career, and I don't want to make it a massive debate here, but if you speak to any Celtic fan or do a little bit of research, you'll find out that Postecoglou had a massive hamstring problem at Celtic.
At his
And a
first
lot-
season, and then not in his second, and not in his third. So
So
again,
why is it
if you
happening
take
in our second season and our first season?
yeah, but again, you're
doing wrong?
saying, but yeah, again, we didn't have massive amounts of injuries last season. We had 2 major injuries to our starting fullbacks. We didn't
So,
have
okay,
12,
that's
13
fine.
injuries.
But why are we so bad after 10 games then? Who's that on if we didn't get injuries?
After 10 games.
Yeah.
After 10 games, we got all the injuries. We got
Right, okay.
injuries to our to both our central defenders and Odeberg and Richarlison on the 11th of November. Then we got Vicario injured in the middle of November. And then the injuries started piling up again after the Chelsea game. So from November all the way to the end of February, we've had 10 or more injuries to our first
We
team
have,
squad.
but you've got to start saying why. It's not normal to get how many players out. It's not normal.
Yeah, again,
And we
but
haven't
if you
adapted.
don't know
There's
why,
been no adaptation from this manager. He's had options there. He's had the youth academy there. He's had players. Look at it against Fulham. He's putting Archie Gray out of position because he won't
between what
flex.
you're doing now and the difference between I'm doing it is I'm saying these are the reasons and we don't know why. You're saying these are the reasons and this
Come
is
on.
why.
No,
Come
you're
on,
giving
why?
no reasoning. All right, we're agree to
To be
disagree.
fair, like, what I would say to it is my point kind of, even if I can understand that we've had a lot of injuries, and you could say it's because of one reason or the other, it could just be that he's been really, really unlucky. It could just be something like that. Or there could be a real meaning behind it in the sense that it's because of training, it's because of the intensity we play at. So there's speculations, but I guess no one knows
Liverpool
the true
had
meaning.
a bunch of injuries during Klopp in his second season.
And they
Hull
adapted.
had it last season.
But yeah, that's
They
the one
didn't
thing I
adapt.
wanted
They
to
got more
continue
depth.
on
They
with.
got more
But all these
players.
teams you're mentioning are funny enough doing better.
The
They've
thing that I would say personally on any of this anyway is even if we've had all these injuries, and I appreciate the injuries are going to obviously have a drop in form to some extent, the position Tottenham are in is unacceptable no matter what. The team we've got out there, the team that we've had out there for the last couple of months, we are not 15th place. This is awful. I've never ever. Okay, I'm 23 years old. I've watched Tottenham obviously all my life. I don't remember a season this bad in terms of watching Tottenham and being so uninterested and so disappointed with the football we play, with the players on the pitch. Because you said it, Simon, at the start of your point about you thought that our team is a lot better than Fulham's. Genuinely, when I look at those two starting 11s, I don't think there's that much between them. I really don't. I actually don't. And in terms of the quality that they have on the pitch and the quality we have on the pitch, I really don't think there's that much of a difference.
No.
It shows again. There's so many different things around why Tottenham are poor this year. There's so many different things, but the one thing I would say is that this team, 15 losses out of how many games we played, 30 or 29, 30 games so far this season is unacceptable. I don't care what players that are out there on that pitch. 15 losses unacceptable. The amount of games we've lost at home is unacceptable. Some of these teams that we've lost to are championship teams. They're championship football teams, and we have lost to them. It is unacceptable the position we are in as Tottenham. I don't care. And for me personally, this is where I'll just say my opinion on Ange. I don't care if we win the Europa League. I don't want Ange as the manager of Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think he's going to bring any sustained success to Tottenham. I cannot see the the style of football leading to any kind of real success over a long period of time. I think it worked. This might be a short-sighted, point of view, and I'd like to, if somebody has a thing against this, then fair enough. But for me, I understand it worked at Celtic because you are the best team in Scotland. You've got the most money out of pretty much every team other than possibly Rangers. You've got the best team. You've got the best players. You can play whatever style of football you want at Celtic and probably win the league. At Tottenham, you're coming into a position where you probably have maybe the 7th, 8th best squad in the league. You cannot just play the same way and expect to roll over all these teams. It doesn't work. All these teams are better than any team you play in Scotland.
So can I come with because the context here is what I think is missing. So to me, I think your conclusion might be the same conclusion I'll come to at the end of the summer, at the end of the season. Like, I'm not sure Ange is the one that should take us further after the summer. What I'm saying is, when people look at the worst record we've had in the league for, I don't know how long, you seem to have those numbers in front of you, but 15 losses in 30 games, something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's the worst we've ever done. But I'm saying we also have had the worst injury record
and you'd be right about
our history. So and I'm saying the correlation between those two things can't be ignored. And so because the context is so muddying the water, I did this poll today, and this is what I wanted to bring up on the pod, and I want to do it with you guys, okay? And I think it might give us a foundation to have a more fair discussion, okay? So the question I want to ask to each and every one of you is this, okay? If Spurs hadn't suffered the worst injury crisis in our history this season, where do you think the team would have been in the league table at this point? So remember, same coach, same players, and the same schedule, but no major injuries. 1 to 4th, 5th to 7th, 8th to 13th, 14th, or the same. So I'll start with Harry.
But a lot of it depends on other teams' injury situation, because there's a lot of teams that Bournemouth have been very unlucky.
But I'm asking it.
But it's a massive thing, because if Bournemouth don't get any of their injuries, I think that they're a lot higher in the league.
Season, exactly the same season. So
it gives us a massive leg up, considering we get no injury crisis and other teams do. So that's important to bear in mind.
It's just a question. If we didn't have any injuries, but had the same coach and the same squad.
Yeah, it's really probably 5th to 7th. I think we'd be disappointed either way.
So 5th to 7th, Harry.
I also think, I think 5th to 7th as well. And the reason I say that is because we played Crystal Palace away, where we had Vicario, we had our full strength back four. And I think aside from Mikey Moore starting that game,
so we have Romero, we have Van de Ven, we have Vicario, we have all our players from start to finish. You think 5th to 7th with Ange as the coach with the squad. Joe?
Yeah.
I would go 5th to 7th, but before I say anything else, there's a massive caveat in that, and I understand the point of yours is a hypothetical, but you have to be ready for injuries at the start of the season. There is no team that will not suffer any injuries. So
absolutely. The hypothetical here is just to measure what we think, which is just it's not objective.
Yeah. So for me, the ceiling of our squad, if it is fully fit
with Ange, with
Ange is 5th to 7th, because that's what we saw to an extent last season. We got 5th or 6th or whatever. So that's our ceiling. I agree.
So now comes the second question which is, and we'll discuss after we have the answer to both these questions. So if we erase Ange from this equation and just look at the quality of the squad, where should Spurs team have finished in the league solely based on the quality of the squad right now? Basically, how good is the squad this board have put together compared to our competitors? And then the same kind of answers: 1 to 4th, 5th to 7th, 8th to 13th, 14th to 20th. Okay, Harry, you're the host, so you get to answer first again.
Oh God. Listen, Ange has been put in a difficult situation with the owners.
Ignore
we haven't done enough.
Just the squad. How good is the squad?
the squad isn't great. I think Joseph's spot on what he said earlier. That the squad isn't
So-
great, but we should
so is
still be
it
doing better.
Should it be 1 to 4th? Should it be 5th to 7th?
It definitely should be 1 to 4th, without a doubt. So I'm going to rule that out instantly.
1 to 4. Now, Joe.
Well, no, Harry wasn't saying.
Sorry, I'm just thinking. No, I'm saying I don't think it would be 1 to 4th at all.
Right.
I'm thinking more the 5th to 7th, maybe a little bit lower.
So 5th to 7th.
Mhm.
That's okay. You can end. Joe, you go.
Yeah, I think I'd probably go 5th to 7th. I think there's a bit more of a. I don't think it's as simple as 5, 6, 7th. I think there's probably like 4, 5, 6 teams almost all in the same amount. So probably
I think
like
we'd be in that,
probably about 5th to 10th,
Yeah.
probably
And
around that range.
It's an estimate. I mean,
Yeah, I get it. But I just think you've got
how about
City,
you, Harry?
United, Chelsea. Oh no, probably not United. City,
Yeah, let's get into
Arsenal.
it after we got
There's
the
so
answer.
many teams that will be above us.
Harry Hennings, what do you say?
Yeah, no, I agree with I think 5th or 7th as well. I mean, I'd like to think 1 to 4, but it's difficult because we look at our midfield and that is nowhere near good. You know, that's nowhere near what other teams have got. No one will put up with Bissouma. No one will put up with Sarr anymore. No, sorry, not Sarr, Bentancur. Like Johnson, he wouldn't start for Forest.
Yeah,
now.
and I
He wouldn't
mean,
start for
and it's the squad with the same schedule, so it's still the depth of the squad is important to measure how we'll do in the league. So
the midfield and the attack that we've got is nowhere near good enough for the top half of the Premier League.
Yeah.
The defense fully fit, I think, is solid, and it's solid in the sense that it's on par with the top teams. It's not better than the top teams. It's on par.
Yeah.
But the midfield and the attack is woeful compared.
We
to
can all
what-
agree that Postecoglou has been let down by the owners, and we could have done a lot more. But I just
No,
think with what you're given, you've got to do more.
I'm not trying to defend
you're
or
not
make an
trying to say
argument for, and what I'm saying is because the injuries has been so extreme, so the circumstances have muddied the water and made this discussion so toxic and hard to have. What I'm saying is what we've come to the conclusion here is like if you look at what your expectations were, looking at the system and looking at the squad, if we've taken away the injuries, you thought like 5th to 7th is what he could achieve. Now you think the squad is also 5th to 7th type good. So what I'm trying to say here is like if we just look at the distance between what you think he can achieve and what the squad can achieve, if there's a distance between that, that's the distance. That's the fairest way.
Yes, but I believe other managers could get us in that top 4.
Yeah, that's where I would say we're literally about to say exactly the same thing. You look at Nuno Espirito Santo right now with
That's what
Forest.
their job is.
Forest are not the 3rd best team in the Premier League, yet he's overperforming with them. We've had managers in the past, Pochettino, for example, definitely overperformed with us at many points. There's no reason we can see Tottenham be in the top 4 possibly. And I understand the injury crisis we've had this season is a valid point, and you don't expect it to this extent. But you are prepared for injuries. You know that key players are going to be out for a long, long time. And we've seen other managers and other teams deal with it so much better. Bournemouth had a massive injury crisis.
What we should expect is coaches at Spurs to overperform what the squad is.
Absolutely. It's what they pay for.
Yeah.
They're paid to at least perform to the level. The 5th to 7th should be minimum.
Yeah. So the club gave us a squad that should be able to compete for Europe, but not for the league, right? And if Ange had a much easier season in terms of injuries, he would have gotten us to where the squad should be, right?
I'm not
That's
convinced.
Right, but you're always going to get injuries.
I'm not completely convinced he definitely would have, though. For me, again, the ceiling was 5th to 7th. I don't think he would have got us there.
Okay, Simon, let me put this in a simple way for you.
No.
I think if Pochettino's the manager, we don't get these injuries, okay? And we would need to have the discussion.
Of course.
If Riola's our manager, we wouldn't be getting these injuries. That's the thing. You can't be saying, "Oh, this guy's fine. Look, we'd be okay if it wasn't for these injuries," but you wouldn't have them if he wasn't here.
Stop putting words
in my mouth. You can't get round. You can't. It's like there's a hole there. You're finding a way to go around the hole before eventually entering it. Just go in the hole and accept that you're always going to get those injuries.
Harry, stop putting words in my mouth. Okay. All I'm trying to do is establish another perspective, So the
No,
discussion can
you've done
be
it well,
about.
but I feel that we're dragging out the injuries here.
I want to let Simon land on what his point is.
You're not
'cause
letting me
then-
explain
yeah.
why I asked the question. You're assuming that I'm doing this in some sort of defense of Ange or to excuse what's happened. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying if we're going to evaluate Ange purely based on coaching, the best way to do that is to evaluate what he could do with the squad he's been given. If you think some other coach could have overperformed with the squad, and and you think that that's what we as Spurs fans should expect from a coach, I'm saying fair, but then at least we know what we're talking about. And also it also tells us something about the mindset we have as Spurs fans, where we say the club is never going to give us a squad that's actually going to be able to compete for the title of the Premier League. So we need a coach that can overperform what he's gotten. And I'm saying the other half of that argument is when injuries happen, having a coach, expecting a coach to overperform when we have a really tough schedule and a squad that's barely able to get to 5th or 7th, might not be the soundest way to evaluate a coach. Because what happens now is you're saying that he should be fired when his management skill is on par with what the squad is able to perform with. Okay, but that's fair. At least we've taken the injuries away from the discussion where we evaluate the coach based solely based on his, in our eyes, abilities. That's all I'm saying, Harry. I'm not defending
No, that's fine.
his
Thank you,
record.
Simon.
I think the thing
No,
I would just say
that's
to that point, to all of this kind of conversation debate, is that for me it's the extent of how poor we have been this season. Like 15th wasn't even in my mind at the start of this season. And the thing is, we could possibly drop lower. We could easily drop lower before the end of the season. I know we could probably finish higher as well. So you need to understand that. But where we are at right now, with everything that should have happened, the minimum we should be is 10th, 9th. We should still be in touching distance of the European positions. We are literally at a point now where we are writing off the Premier League season. Everyone's sitting there going, we only care about the Europa League. That can never be a situation that Tottenham Hotspur are in, ever. And again, different reasons of why these injuries could have happened. I agree with Harry for a certain extent. It could definitely be something to do with the intensity of the football we play, the training. But you're right, we don't know for 100%. We could have just been the most unlucky football club this season and had multiple injuries out of things that were out of our control. But no matter what whatever that happened, we should never be in this position. And I think many managers would have kept us afloat and would have kept us ticking over and getting results here and there, whereas Ange basically fell flat and we just started losing every single game when that should never have been the case.
Joe, I'm just going to come with a
Go on, last comment, and we need to move on.
And then Harry's going to come in. All I'm saying now is I agree with you. That's what I was talking about when I said his floor is lower, but his ceiling is higher. Because I definitely agree that there are coaches that would probably have put us up at 9th or 8th. My whole thing is I don't care. I don't care about 8th or 4th or 5th. I want to win the league. So I want a coach that has a system and a philosophy that can win us the league. And so my question is about if what I'm going to judge Ange on ultimately is if I think he's good enough to take us there. And I have questions about that. I have fair questions about that. But I think this obsession we have about what he can do, what a coach can do for us now with these circumstances, instead of focusing on where do we want to go and who can take us there. To me, that means we need a much deeper squad. Because if you look at all the stats,
yeah,
the teams that are the best in the world are the highest at intensity, highest at when it comes to pressing, highest when it comes to dominating the ball. So all those things that we want, the difference is they have a deeper squad. They have a real squad.
Absolutely.
And we don't. And so the failure comes from that. It means
Can I say a point to that though?
Yeah.
because I appreciate your opinion on that, and I understand what you're saying in terms of you believe that Ange's football can be winning football. Because I've kind of thought that at points in the past as well. I think for me, when I look at what Ange plays and how he plays, I think he needs the best 11 players on the pitch in every game. He needs to have his players need to be better than his opponents, and if his players are better than the opponents, he will win football matches. Tottenham aren't going to have that very easily because the Premier League is massively money orientated. You've got top teams that are going to always spend more than us until we get new owners. So right now, I don't think Ange can succeed here. But the other thing as well is, for me, when I think about successful football teams in the past, they were all built on excellent defense. You've even, I think about what Arsenal are right now, and it pains me to say it, but Arsenal are built on an incredible defensive structure where even when they're not playing the best and the attacking players aren't really thriving, they can get away and get wins when because of their defense.
But why? But why? Why?
Because they can keep clean sheets.
No, because they have the best. Because can I blow your mind? Before we got the injuries to our central defenders, we had 10 games played. We had the third best defense in the league. When Romero and Van der Ven plays, we have one of the best defenses in the league. When they don't, we fall through. So my whole point here is that every team that wants to win and plays a system that's winning needs the best players in the world. And so I think I could agree with you. Like, we might not be able to be a club that can get the best players in the league, and therefore we should get a coach that can do whatever he can with whatever he's going to get. But at least then we have an honest discussion about it's a club problem. This club is what's disappointing us, and therefore we need someone that can save us from our club.
Yeah, but that's always been the case with Tottenham. That's the position that we're in, unfortunately.
That's the issue.
Like, I know, but I agree with you, Simon. 100%. That is one of the biggest issues, and we spoke so many times. I'm sorry, I'm going on, Harry, but we spoke so many times on this podcast about the ownership and how poor it is and what they've been like. So where we haven't invested the right way. But to expect Tottenham to change into this powerhouse in terms of like, we are going to go and spend all the money and we will give Ange the tools that he needs to go and win is unrealistic, because it's not going to happen. So unfortunately, we need a manager who can work with what he's got and create a team that can get over the line in different positions, rather than a manager that needs everything to succeed. There's managers that don't need everything to succeed that can get you over the line. There's plenty of managers that have done that in the past. And that's what we need. We just need a manager who can get something out of what he's got.
And I think that's
Newcastle with Eddie Howe. They just won a Carabao Cup. He hasn't got the best team in the league. He's got nowhere near the best team in the league. Yet you never know.
It's never going to win them the league, but it's never going to win them the league. And so,
final comment.
I just think I totally agree with you, Joesph. I think your thinking is sound, and I agree with you. But I just think what we've talked about now kind of comes to the point, which is our club is never going to give us the team and the players that is going to take us there, and therefore a lot of fans have conceded that fight and just want someone who could do the best they can with whatever we're going to get. And I'm not totally into that. I rather have someone that's aiming for something and plays a way that could win and pressuring the club to give him what he needs, because at least then we have a theoretical chance. And so that's the point of view I'm coming from. So
I get that. Unfortunately, I think you might be supporting the wrong club, because I don't think we're ever going to be giving.
I know.
That's the sad indictment of being a Tottenham fan. You're never given what you expect. So I completely understand what you're saying, but unfortunately, I just don't know if you're ever going to get it.
I'm never going
to get it. Thank you, guys. Let's listen to what Ange Postecoglou had to say after the game now. Still a few things to get through. So here's what he had to say.
And I imagine there's some frustration there at times with the game. You grew into it, but then it ran away from you at the end. What were your overall thoughts?
Yeah, it was disappointing outcome. I thought, up until they scored, I thought we were really starting to get on top of them. It was a tight game. I don't think Vic had a save to make up until that point, and we just conceded a really soft goal, and then the game just got away from us. We kind of opened up and tried to chase it, but again, disappointing loss for us, because like I said, up until that point it wasn't a great game, but we were well in it. I thought we started the second half better than them, and we had a couple of chances, big chances to get the lead. We missed them, and in the end, lose the game.
So that is Ange Postecoglou there. Harry, sorry you haven't got a chance to speak for a while. A lot going on there, so appreciate your patience. What did you make of Postecoglou, what he had to say there?
I don't know at this point, to be honest. I don't know whether that's the truth or whether that's just another excuse, because he says a lot of the time it was disappointing, we'll build on it, we'll go again next week, it's nowhere near good enough. But like I said earlier with the players, it's the same story every time, and it gets to a point where it's not good enough anymore, because this is a manager who says that, you know, he's quite it's right, Simon. It gets to a point where he says, like, he comes out with very obscure points and he comes out with very bold things to say, but 15 losses in the league, I think, as Joe mentioned earlier, 15 losses in the league already isn't good enough, but we've already equalled our worst amount of losses in the league from the 08-09 season, but we've still got Chelsea to play, Liverpool to play, Forest to play. We could end up with 19, 20 losses this season in the Premier League. We genuinely could, and that would just... It will be the worst season that I think we could ever have in the Premier League. But yeah, I think Ange's... I mean, it's unfortunate, because I've always been a massive fan of Ange. You know, if there's one Ange fan, it's me, because I've wanted him to succeed from minute one. I've loved the way he comes across. I've loved his football. You know, I bought the Ange ball book that I found in Waterstones, because everything about Ange I can get my hands on, I'm there with, because I just love this. I just love him as a character, as a manager. And
it's really likable. Yeah,
he's so likable, but it's just it is hard to get out, and it's important to get this off my chest, because it is hard to support this club. But yeah, I just think it's maybe it's time to admit that he is out of his depth a bit, and he's just clutching at straws now to try and save his own, to save himself. Because as Simon or Joe said earlier about rushing them back for that Chelsea game, which was needless, because he was saving himself for that. They were nowhere near ready, and then what did that do? That set them back for another 3 months. So yeah, maybe he's out of his depth.
Maybe. I was Anjin like you until yesterday, day before yesterday. But that for me is it's just one defeat too many. It's just frustrating, carbon copying those interviews. Joesph, do you also, like myself, and I put it on social media, and I'm really interested in the response it got, but do you find him difficult to listen to post-match?
Yeah, it just feels like a broken record now, doesn't it? Like, at first, when he first used to come out and say these things, I always used to kind of believe it and just go, you know what, you're right. You know, it's this reason, it's that reason, these things can happen. It's just how football goes, and I appreciate that. And it's the same as all the players, like we've said before earlier, you know, today, about, you know, Maddison and Son coming out and Romero coming out going, we don't like the position we're in, but we're working hard to get out of it, and you've got to stick together and everything like that. And it's great. It's great for the, you know, oh yeah, let's be a community and a team. But I'm fed up. 15 losses. It's just unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable for Tottenham Hotspur. And I've had enough of it, to be honest. And that's what I've just come to the end of trying to believe in this team. You know, again, I said it. I didn't watch the game on Sunday. I went out with my friends and I had a good time, and I watched Chelsea Arsenal. I didn't care what happened in that game. Watched the final. Had a nice time, because I can't bother to sit there and watch Tottenham play boring, disappointing football week in, week out, and to just sit there and have my weekend ruined by these 11 men on the pitch that I, for some reason, have dedicated half my life to. I can't be bothered to sit there and watch it. So, you know, after all this post-game stuff, I mean, I love Tottenham. I bleed Tottenham. You know, my passion is football. My passion is sitting here and talking with you guys about Tottenham. I love it. But this football club and what it's doing to me is unhealthy at this point. And I'm fed up with just watching this crap football week in, week out. And again, the same excuses from these people that are paid thousands upon thousands to sit there and try and give us the kind of football that we just want. Again, we've said it so many times about the money that Tottenham fans pay to go and watch the football. It's extortionate. And if you're going to be charged the second most amount in Europe compared to Real Madrid, or the most in Europe, then be given the product that you're paying for. And unfortunately, Tottenham fans have been scammed. It's almost like fraud at this point for the amount of money we pay to watch Tottenham, and we get this product back. So I'm just completely at an end of where I'm just like, this is when I know I've completely stopped believing, where I've just completely clocked out. It's happened with Conte. And it happened with like the Stellini kind of, transition where I was just like, when we went, what was it, 5-0 down to Newcastle in like 22 minutes or something, when Stellini was in charge, I remember just not feeling anything, just laughing. And I'm at the same stage now with Ange where I'm just like, when I see us go 1-0 down, I just laugh at it. I don't even care. When I see a score, I don't celebrate. I just sit there and go, all right. And you've fallen out of love with what Tottenham is. So we need complete change all over the board. I know I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but
Okay.
it starts with the manager, and then you've got to move on with the players and everything. And obviously the ownership is another story, but we got to hope everything can change with this football club.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Simon, let's get your thoughts then, shall we? I might live to regret this. Ange, he's incident with a fan. I don't know still to
I
this
think the
moment.
listeners and the watchers love to get some spicy Harry content clip up.
Mate, it's great.
Maybe that's what Spurs does to you. I hate it. I hate getting all wrapped up. I love sitting there going,
I
"Oh,
promise.
we're going to win."
I won't trigger you. I'll be.
No, you're absolutely fine. I always enjoy these little discussions. I think they're healthy and much needed. But with Ange, he had an altercation, didn't he, with a fan after the game? I mean,
Yeah.
where it is in the dugout suggests that he's a Fulham fan, but I don't know. Either way, it's not what you want to see, is it? He does bite in these situations, but I do feel for him at the same time. He's clearly feeling it. It shows he cares.
Yeah, I saw 2 different clips. I saw one clip when he was just. It was just like the end part of the argument when the fan was kept asking him, "Oh, what's that? What was that?" And I was like, "Oh, why is he biting at that? That's not too bad, right?" But then I saw a longer clip when he actually called him a name, and that was what kind of got to Ange. And he shouldn't bite, but he's human and he's sad because he lost the game and he's under pressure. And he had a moment where he kind of wanted to defend himself. And considering, as I said earlier, all the ridiculous and honestly disrespectful things he's been called, I kind of get it. And I'm not talking about the sound criticism that I've heard on this podcast. I'm talking about him being called fatty and people screaming really obsessive,
all of that is wrong. Yeah.
And I mean, calling him out of his depth and just disrespecting his career and his achievements. And when stuff goes over the board, that's the things. That's the stuff that I think gets to him. So he's human. I try not to. To me, that's just the nonsense that comes with the league. I mean, we get bogged up in that stuff. It doesn't really matter. And just on I get that a lot of fans are fed up, and I get it. The record isn't good enough. I totally agree with Joe. 15 losses is not acceptable. He knows that. The team knows that. Again, I have my own view of it and perspective on what I want, and with that, all that stuff is subjective. To me, it's a good sign that the team is still behind him. The players still seem to love him and still want to play under him, and I'm still seeing effort. I thought the performance against AZ was really good. It wasn't perfect, but I thought it was really good. That's why it's so confusing and disappointing when the performance against Fulham was so bad, and it underlined the fact that we need all our best players to be on the pitch for this to work. And I do think that it might be over. I mean, the league record is bad to the extent that I think it's fair for him to lose his job if he doesn't. I think there's an exception, which is if he wins European League. I don't think he gets fired. I think that's how he saves his job. Again, I don't really care about the performances in the league as much as I care about I don't care so much about the results in the league as I care about the performances. So it's the bad performances against City and against Fulham that I really, makes me worry about if he can get this back on track. Again, I think, as fans and especially as Spurs fans, the club puts us in this situation where they don't back a coach, and then the coach underperforms, and then we give up on him because it's a natural, effect of us needing someone to blame that we can actually change. We can't change Levy as easy, so we blame the coach. And so we have these 18, 24-month cycles. I want to break that cycle. I don't see a coach out there that's an obvious upgrade on Ange. So I'm still behind him, but I totally understand that if not the majority, but at least half of the fan base wants a change. I'm not going to defend everything he does. I'm just going to keep trying to underline the context because I think they're so
You
extraordinary.
provide balance, and that's much appreciated. I like that level-headedness. It's needed.
And just, there's different perspectives. And I think like this club is so fucking odd that I actually think that we have that the fact that we have a coach that wants to play with an identity that is exciting, and
we are. Whatever you
skills.
think, we're excited to watch. We're an entertainment.
And the fact that he's a great human being, I think all that stuff matters to me.
And it should.
But and I want to make this clear. Despite all of that, I'm not, sure Ange is the one that's going to take us all the way. I think there's there's obvious things in his way of playing that I find confusing and I see holes in. But I don't think we're at that point yet. I think it's easier to change the manager when we have like a team that we think can win and a coach that might not be good enough to take us all the way. But for now, I think there's squad issues and backing issues and coaching issues. And in that situation, I'd rather stick with what we have. If someone doesn't, amazing doesn't come available, that would be like an obvious upgrade.
No, thank you very much.
A lot of
Simon.
thoughts, but I hope you guys could follow all that.
No, definitely. No, thank you very much. Shall we get the thoughts of a Fulham fan, quickly touch on them and a couple of players before we end for today? Joesph, I want to ask you about something that Harry brought up earlier. Matthias Tell going to the away fans, a clip obviously circulating, saying that we need to be together was, what he repeated. He deserves a lot of credit, doesn't he, for this? Harry said earlier, 19 years of age, he's been here a month. Other players go missing. That so-called leadership team walk straight off the pitch, and all their false carbon copy messages, as Harry says, across social media for them not to turn up next week, or to be ill and all this, that, and the other. And Tell, for me, he's excellent in this game, and he's leading off the pitch as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think all Tottenham fans are really behind him and want him to have a successful career at Tottenham, and obviously, hopefully, after this 6-month loan that he stays on, which I think he will. I feel like it would seem confusing for Tottenham to ever do this kind of loan deal without basically ensuring that they're going to get him long term, because the amount of money they're spending on a loan deal is crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, it was great to see him kind of, not take ownership, because obviously it wasn't his fault. I thought he actually played okay from what I've seen against Fulham. He looked okay. Obviously, he wasn't unbelievable, but he looked like he played okay. Obviously, he hasn't had the smoothest kind of transition to Tottenham. Obviously, started off quite well getting a goal against Villa, but then he hasn't really kind of done too much. He obviously does not suit playing up front or as a lone striker at all. But people are saying that he played quite well off the left. So, maybe he'll be the long-term solution to Son, who knows? But it's great to see, a young player kind of taking that initiative to, discuss that with unhappy fans. Like, I see it. You see it a lot in foreign football more than in British football. You see fans have actually more of a connection with the players. I feel like with what the Premier League's become, because it's so money orientated, and the players almost feel like these celebrities that fans can't touch. Whereas you see it more with foreign football, where the fans and the players are almost, still on almost not level terms, but what I mean. There's still a communication. There's still a reason for the players to care about what the fans say. So seeing that from a young player proves that they do care about the fans. They want to get their input, and they want everyone to work together. And I appreciate, Tell doing that. But like Harry said before, it should not be left to him to do that. It should be Romero, it should be Son, it should be the players as well that haven't performed. The players all season that have been the ones that aren't really the one, the senior players that should be performing week in, week out, who have been the ones that are disappointing. I can accept that Bergvall, Archie Gray, Matthias Tell, Odebear are going to make mistakes and they're going to be, have poor performances. But from some of these senior players, especially like the likes of Son, he should be delivering a 6 out of 10 week in, week out, and we don't get that from him. And from even in the managerial dugout, I don't believe we've had a 6 out of 10 from Ange every week. There's, again, like I've mentioned before, there's so many mistakes that he's made, and we don't have that communication between the players and the players and the fans, or the manager and the fans. So yeah, it's all great seeing it from Tell, but again, it more just shows to me. It more just shows the lack of leadership from this so-called leadership team that is just an absolute. There's no point having it, because the younger players seem like more leaders than the actual leadership team there is. So it is what it is. I wouldn't take too much into it about Tell doing that. I think it was just him trying to calm down some fans. But, at the end of the day, fans should be able to voice their distaste to what they're paying to go and watch. I mean, that is a shocking performance and a shocking defeat. The one thing I would say as well, I know Simon mentioned about performances. You care more about the performances than results, and I do as well. I don't mind Tottenham losing games. It's more the fact of how we lose games that really frustrates me, because I see us go out there and give nothing. We don't fight. We don't have any quality. We don't have anything to take any positives from. And the thing that, I'm struggling with is I'm not seeing the performances under Ange either. If I was seeing performances and I was seeing football that I believed in, I'd still be behind him. But I don't. You
didn't see it against AZ?
I saw it in the second half. I don't think we'll be that great in the first half. One thing I would say as well is I think it is always, usually every single game, is one half is okay, the other half's crap. It's every single time it seems to either be the first half is terrible and we need a reaction and we get a bit of a reaction, or the first half is okay and the second half is completely inadequate. So it's just, I don't see the performances from Ange to believe that he can actually get this team into a successful position again, like seeing the actual winning football much. Again, we see glimpses of it and that's great, but you've got to be more consistent. There's no consistency in Tottenham, none.
No,
do you think a part of that is informed by the fact that we've never seen it under any other coach? Like every other coach we've had post Parch, when it started going down, we've changed the manager? Or do you think it's just, you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I get you. And I understand when you said about the 18-month, 24-month thing. I completely agree. I think we do need to stick with a manager longer than that. Personally, I just don't think Ange is the right manager to be the one that we stick with for that. But it's just, consistency might not have been built up. But for me, from when I've watched Ange and his career at Tottenham, I saw a 10-game slate where his style of football was kind of, teams didn't really know what was going on. And then it felt like for me, since that, people have figured him out. And I haven't seen anywhere near the levels of football pretty much since then on a consistent basis. There's been none of it for a year and a half.
My argument against that is that the 10 first games this season statistically were better. So I agree with you. The first 10 games, we won a lot of games because teams didn't know what to do with us. Now they do. So when we played those first 10 games this season, when we were healthy, like if you look at the pressing, if you look at the amount of goals we scored, like every statistical, data point was a lot higher than the 10 first games last year. It was just that we didn't really win the games always, so we had a much more inconsistent result. But the performances were really, really good from my perspective.
Yeah, but again, at the end of the day, winning trophies is getting results, and if you're not going to get the results,
definitely. I'm just saying, as I'm focusing on performances, I saw the team getting better, and then it crashed.
Yeah, but again, it can't crash. That's the other thing. Is as much as I understand the injuries, and I appreciate that, performances cannot drop off a complete cliff when a couple of injuries come about. You've got to be able to maintain some kind of level, A
couple of injuries.
Right, no, we're leaving it there. We're not getting into it. No.
Yeah.
We're leaving it.
It can't fall off a cliff as much as it has. I can understand you're not going to play
like
any.
a Twitter,
you're not gonna
it's
play
like a
as
Twitter
good.
debate.
It is, yeah. We don't want that at all, do we?
Go on for hours.
You nitpick words and you get into, straw man, and yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I'm just joking.
No, thank you. Focusing on our opposition, Fulham, before we wrap up, thank you to Barney, who I have the pleasure to do some work with around raising awareness of autism. He's a Fulham photographer and content creator. He's sending his thoughts post-match.
So it finished at Craven Cottage, Fulham 2, Tottenham 0. And in the game that started off, well, Spurs had possession, they were pressing as you'd expect an Ange Postecoglou side. We grew into the game, there wasn't much goalmouth action, apologies, but all in all, I felt we weathered that storm. And as the half grew on, neither side had many chances, though during the game Dominic Solanke should have done better perhaps. I think he missed an open goal and he headed wide. Leno made a couple of great saves as well. Vicario made 1 or 2 stops. Both goalkeepers have worked. But I thought defensively, both teams were really, really good. Offensively, I felt we shaded it. I mean, brilliant goals. Ryan Sessegnon to cap it off. It's quite tricky to bring that ball under control, but when he chipped that ball in, it was a wonderful moment for him. Obviously, he didn't have the best of time at Spurs, so didn't celebrate his goal, but I can tell what it meant to him at full time. It was really emotional, and Mooney's always loved scoring against Spurs, so it's a really, really big win. And you've got to put the ball in the net, haven't you? I felt, overall, I felt we deserved to win. It's one of those games where I said to my Spurs friend Harry before the game, I said, this has got a draw written all over it. And the longer the game went on, I was thinking to myself, 1 goal is going to decide this game. And, well, in effect, 2 goals, 2 late goals. And, I felt we wanted it more. We looked hungrier. So, yeah, 2-0 win, clean sheet. Onwards to the FA Cup quarter-finals. Up the Fulham, but, yeah, big pressure for Ange Postecoglou now. I understand, from their perspective, it's never good being down where they are in the table, but, that's football. And it's the nature of the beast sometimes. That's how it goes, but up the Fulham, onwards we go.
Thank you, Barney, for sending in his thoughts. Harry, how do you thought that Fulham played in this game? Because I thought they done well, but maybe they're there for the taking at times.
To be honest, I didn't actually watch the game. I had the game on my own for my club, but watching the highlights match of the day, they just seemed, obviously the first half wasn't too much in it. I think both sides were pretty bang average, and then obviously we grew into the game in the second half. So from what I've seen, it was pretty even. But then Fulham just, I think, to put it simply, they have more fight, they have more determination to get the 3 points, and quite frankly, they're in a better position than we are at the moment. They want Europe, so they can go out and win games to get results that they need to kick on. So yeah, all credit to Fulham because they were the better side, obviously over the 90 minutes, as they're the side that's walked away with 3 points and a big win to push on for Europe.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. Well said. Joesph, do you think that Fulham can make that late push for Europe?
Yeah, possibly. I think they'll be looking at that. I think they're still in the FA Cup, aren't they? So that's going to be a massive thing for them. If they can somehow make it towards a final of that, that's bigger than probably just them getting Europe. Honestly, I think a lot of the fans would want a trophy. So no, I mean, I think being a Fulham fan, I think you've got to be as ecstatic as almost you can right now. You haven't usually seen this type of football. You haven't seen this kind of success, and you're in a great position to succeed, keep on going forward. So no, I think it'll be great being a Fulham fan right now. But there's still a long way to go. They've got to get over some big games. Again, a massive game coming up in the FA Cup for them. But I haven't got a bad word to say about Fulham in terms of how they play and the manager and the players they've got. I think they're a great outfit in the Premier League, and they give everyone a game. So that's what you want to see. You want to see a competitive team, competitive league. So, and that's what we get with teams like Fulham. So yeah, fair enough to them. I think they completely deserve the win overall against Spurs. So we can't complain too much.
No, fair enough. Thank you very much. I think that wraps us up nicely for this week's podcast episode. A long one, so apologies, but it's been a good one. Over the weekend, Newcastle ended their 70-year of not winning a trophy. So hopefully it's just us now. We can, or maybe Villa, maybe Forest, but hopefully we can, end that trophy drought as well. I mean, it's been a doom and gloom at times today, but we would hopefully get back to what we all want to see, and that is, in Champions League, winning trophies, fighting for trophies is where we want our club to be. You never know with Europa League this year. You know what Spurs are like. It wouldn't surprise me if we find a way to win the competition. You never know. You never know. Come on, we've got to end on a positive note.
I'll tell you what as well. It's
blinded optimism.
As much as fair enough for Newcastle, and I'm sure their fans going to be over the moon winning that Carabao Cup. It was so depressing watching it and just seeing how happy they were. And don't get me wrong, again, they deserve it. Those fans have been through as much shit as we have, to be honest. But well, actually, no, more than we have, to be fair. But
yeah,
just seeing them and seeing how happy they are, I'm like, God, I crave that. I absolutely crave that. When are we going to have it? I have no clue. But
we can only watch on with envy, can't we? I think that's what happens with new owners.
Exactly.
A bit of ambition. Top manager in Eddie Howe, I think, deserves a lot of credit.
Definitely.
So
fair play to Newcastle. They fully deserved it off the game as well. They absolutely battered Liverpool in that game.
They did indeed. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Big up to you if you listened all the way to the end. I really do honestly appreciate that. You guys make it special. If you're listening on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. Check out our sponsor in the Kitman, and thanks to the panel for this evening. Let's go around one by one and see where you can find them across social media. Joesph, thank you. Great to have you back on. It has been, as you said, a little while, but where can people find you on your own socials?
I'm on X at Joesph THFC, so please drop me a follow. Every now and then I'll tweet about Tottenham and how disappointed I am usually. No, it's great to be involved with the channel. I know we haven't been doing the post-match spaces as much, but we're still going to try and do them every now and then when we can. So those are great for everyone to come in and have their say about, what we've just watched, instant match reaction kind of thing. So thank you again for having me on. Really, really enjoyed it. Connecting with new people as well. It was so much fun and kind of talking about different things. And, it's great to have these conversations. It's one thing that I love being as a Tottenham fan. I love discussing it with smart people that all have their opinions, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. It's great to have those debates and talk about different things. So thank you for having me on once again. Really enjoyed it.
No, thank you for coming on. Simon, thanks very much for coming on. I look forward to round 2, anytime, any place. Where can people find you on the socials?
I think I did my hammy there when we had that debate. I blame Ange.
Yeah,
let's go with that.
You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram. If you look at the screen in front of you, you can see my name, how it's spelled. And if you write that in, you'll see me right there in the X space.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for coming on. Harry, thank you very much. Crazy episode, I think, to bring you into, and all weird circumstances with Spurs, a longer one. But thank you very much this evening. Very solid debut. Where can people find you across social media? Talk to people about what you do.
Thank you very much, Harry. It's been a long-awaited collaboration, but it's been a great one. Hopefully more to come in the future. So on Instagram, I run the Spurs page, Spurs Direct. So just can see down next to my name. If you onto Instagram, search that up. A follow would be greatly appreciated, please, because obviously I'm trying to reach 2,000 hopefully soon. But yes, you'll find bits of my journalism and podcasting career on there as well. So thank you very much for the support.
No, thank you. And as far as I'm concerned, you're always welcome back. You have the best name out there, if I may say so myself. So you're always welcome back on. Thank you to everyone this evening. It's been a good one. There's always a lot to talk about when Spurs lose. I suppose that's a small positive. I won't complain though if we go back to winning ways at all. But for now, a massive come on you Spurs.